Abel was only 7 when he found out he didn't have a single drop of magic. For a mage, this is basically a straight-up death sentence. Magic runs in his blood, and since his late parents were wizards and his sister Frozal already has her powers, he was totally sure he'd become a wizard too. He was obsessed with magic, which is exactly why he couldn't stand seeing it disrespected. He asks the guy if his powers just haven't kicked in yet, and his dad, he was totally crushed, and even though he knew it was all gone, what happened next was way more terrifying. Everyone on the street started freaking out when this heretic suddenly showed up out of nowhere. A few of them got eaten, so the rest had to book it just to stay alive. Abel jumps in instantly to shield his sister from the danger. Heretics are basically traitors who ditched the world's creator to follow a fake god, and they literally just pop up out of nowhere. Frozal totally panicked, so he grabbed her hand and they both bolted out of there. His sister is a total natural with magic, but he's the one stuck carrying all the weight. He froze in his tracks, his eyes going wide when he realized someone was standing right in front of them. This guy wasn't just a heretic, he was a straight-up fake god. That fake god doesn't waste a second and goes straight for him. Frokkel just throws up a wall of earth and shuts that move down. He knew she couldn't take down that fake god and tried to stop her, but his sister was way too stubborn to listen since all she wanted was to keep him safe. And just like that, blood sprayed everywhere. They're flashing back to when they were just little kids, remembering how his parents were totally blown away by his insane magic circle skills. His dad keeps promising him new grimoires and calling him the reincarnation of the legendary sage Paracelsus, so everyone's hyped that he's gonna be a world-class wizard one day. Truth is, he was totally helpless while that fake god absolutely wrecked them. He scrambled over to his sister, begging her to please just open her eyes. He realized she was still breathing, but then her body started glowing and a mark of the false god appeared on her, a curse that meant she didn't have much time left. This fake god's curse is basically permanent, but there's one secret way out. A legendary potion made by the ultimate archmage, Paracelsus. He swore he'd master magic and build the Philosopher's Stone with his own 2 hands. He wasn't even sweating the fact that he had 0 magic because he still had to break the news to his sister. He's crying his eyes out as she calls his name, and even though he feels terrible for her, he promises he'll protect her no matter what. Abel bolted awake the second he heard his sister calling his name. He shouted her name twice, desperate to see if she was still breathing. He totally lost it and pulled his sister into a massive hug. Frozal was totally caught off guard by how the game was going. She just straight up decked her brother with that massive fist. She went totally ballistic and promised he was dead meat if he ever tried that again. Hevel is trying to prove she totally broke the rules by using magic on someone who isn't even a mage. It's totally normal for a big brother to worry about his sister, and Frozal just smiles because he totally gets it, especially since Abel's been a complete shut-in for years, skipping school and doing absolutely nothing. The reason was actually super simple. He had to step up because he was the only one who could handle it. It's been 9 whole years since that massive tragedy went down, Abel's. The mark on her skin vanished in a flash, leaving him as the only witness because even his cursed sister can't remember a thing. He hasn't shown his face yet, but that fake god's curse is still a massive problem, so keep digging through those books to figure out how his soul works. He knew this life-shortening curse was buried deep and moving super slow. You won't even see the signs until death is right around the corner. If he doesn't make the philosopher, he was the only one who could pull it off, so he spent his entire life mastering the magic needed to get the Philosopher's Stone. He stayed locked in his room and ditched school completely. Since he had no magic, going to the academy was a total waste of time. He was basically a total shut-in who never. He was still behind after crashing yesterday, and Frozal started screaming the second he saw him about to drown in that mountain of books again. She snatched him by his shirt and dragged him along, knowing that even if he's locked up, he can't go 3 days without food or water and will definitely die before his sister. His sister is screaming at him on the stairs to put the book back before their dad loses it. But he doesn't care one bit since he's used to getting in trouble. He got super hyped when his sister mentioned she was taking exams at Plum Magic Academy, the toughest school in the world. The food is already out and waiting for everyone in the cafeteria. Even their dad was already at the table looking super annoyed, immediately calling him out for reading books while they were eating. Frozel stayed totally quiet while Abel just kept reading and munching on his food. Their dad looked like he was about to blow his top, so Frozel told him to chill and eat. But Abel wouldn't stop because he was grinding through 2 books and a pile of notes for a science paper deadline he set for himself. The siblings were right in the middle of a huge fight when their dad suddenly stepped in to shut it down. He told him that school is almost over, so he better figure out what he actually wants to do with his life. Abel told his dad straight up that he's known for a long time he'd become a magic researcher, and he was 100% serious. He was totally shocked when his dad lost his cool and trashed every single one of his science papers. The publisher he sent his story to shut him down immediately. He told Abel to get a grip because nobody would ever want to read this stuff. To them, the whole idea of using magic without mana was, he was totally convinced that you don't need magic powers to prove you're the real deal. He totally froze up the second his dad asked how he was actually going to prove it. His dad screamed at him to face reality, but Abel wasn't backing down because he was the only one who knew Frosala was cursed, and he refused to stop his magic training. The siblings were totally shocked when their dad disowned Abel and kicked him out of the house for good. Frost is stepping up to try and put a stop to his own father. Abel knew his dad wasn't kidding when he suddenly grabbed him by his shirt and shoved him right out the door along with his bag. He begged his dad to at least give him his groom wire since it was half full of notes, but his father totally ignored him. He's tossing him some cash to survive, but he's got to land a job before that money totally runs out. He finally scored a place to crash, but he had zero clue what his next move was. Flying magic doesn't even exist in his world, so he had to step up and use whatever he had on him to make it work. Luckily, he's got all his gear in that makeup kit, but he totally misjudged his dad's savage power move. He checks his bag and finds nothing but clothes, but then his dad tosses him a fat sack of cash that should be plenty to buy all his gear. Everything in this world is just a mix of fire, air, water, and earth, so if he can master all 4, he'll finally be able to create the legendary Philosopher's Stone. So he started studying fire like crazy to recreate that fireball spell without magic, but playing with real flames turned into a total nightmare. He's got to use his brain because there's definitely a secret or a way to finally crack this thing wide open. Then, right in the middle of his thoughts, he suddenly stands up. He was totally lost, but he knew he had to head there anyway. He walks into the bookstore and it's basically like he just found paradise. The old merchant was hyped to see him, and the guest's eyes lit up when he pulled out a brand new grimoire. The old man handed him a stack of books, and he started flipping through them right away. He found out about this mysterious new light theory, but since nobody can explain if it's actually spiritual or just a total mystery, he's going to have to figure it out on his own. He realized the book was a total flop and slammed it shut, while the old man figured Abel rejected it because it was just old ideas pretending to be something new. The old guy just laughs because his powers are a total cheat code, and since Abel's been coming to this bookstore since he was a little kid, he and the owner, Mr. Cannon, he's always checking out cool books, and since the place is packed with wizards, they actually come to him for advice whenever he knows his stuff. The old man tells him to take this book because he's never seen anything like it, and it might just be a total treasure for Abel. As soon as the last guy found out it was written in ancient script, he was dying to check it out. Mr. Kenyon knew this would totally grab his attention since he'd been away for so long. He showed the book to a bunch of powerful wizards, but not a single one of them could read. Paracelsus's original spellbooks are basically the blueprints for all magic, but since they're written in an ancient code, he thinks you have to learn that old language to truly. The book was totally ancient, and Mr. Kanan only got it from a friend who found it in a warehouse right before it was torn down. But if it's actually part of the Prim, Abel was totally confused by the title because he'd never even heard the word science before. The old man let out a huge sigh because this thing isn't even a real grimoire, and it's not part of the original series. As soon as Abel starts reading, he looks totally lost. He asks the old guy to borrow the book, and Mr. Cannon lets him, but he wants to know if there's actually anything useful inside. Abel's eyes went wide as he started reading, realizing this might finally be the book he's been hunting for this whole time. The Door to Truth. The very first page breaks down an experiment proving that fire elements aren't even real. 1,000 years ago, this legendary sage named Paracelsus just showed up out of nowhere as the ultimate mage. Word on the street is that God himself showed up and gave him his crazy duel. And yeah, Abel was definitely in the same boat. But that science book, it had him totally stumped. It took him a full week to read, and the stuff inside was way crazier than anything he ever expected. That book basically flipped the script and made us question everything about the original series. He decided to run a little experiment to see what would actually happen. It was finally pumping out fresh air. He cranks up the heat on the mercury to turn it into mercury oxide. He cranks the heat way up and catches all that escaping gas by bubbling it through the water. He followed every single step in the book exactly how it was written. But it looks like he just couldn't pull it off. That's when he spotted a tiny drop in the bottle, exactly like it said in The Principles of Science. He went all out with his experiments, and after failing a ton of times trying to make real fireballs, all that hard work finally paid off. He was sure this book was packed with wild theories that ditched the 4 elements for atomic theory, but he knew he couldn't actually prove it just by running experiments. He studied the 4 elements and was totally blown away when all the crazy stuff science couldn't explain finally started making sense. When it comes to physical stuff, the laws of science are actually 100% real. Since this book is 1,000 years old, it proves science was actually huge back then, but it totally died out when magic took over. And now everyone's fighting because the book says the 4 elements are fake, giving him all the proof he needed to keep his crazy experiments going. Right after that, Abel headed straight over to their house. Frozel caught sight of him, and her sister was so stunned she rushed straight over to him. His dad was still fuming so he couldn't go home, and even though Abel begged his sister for help, she was totally over it and didn't want to do a single thing for him. He's known his sister since they were babies, so he was positive she'd totally fold under all that pressure. He's figured out over the years that as long as he's the one asking, she'll totally listen to him. He's stuck in his room 24/7, trying to use science to make magic real. He can't cast a single spell because he has 0 mana, but he's a total pro at building magic gear and designing complex magic circles. He's basically the GOAT at tweaking magic circles and knows nobody can touch his skills. This is all thanks to years of non-stop grinding and studying. Usually when a mage makes he thought he could just swap the 4 elements for atomic theory, but things got way more complicated than he expected. Every magic circle starts with the creator god's name because you're technically breaking divine laws and need their permission. But if you're rebuilding the whole thing from scratch, you have to do things totally differently. He was totally lost, so he decided to switch things up and try a new plan. It's been 5 whole days since they finally figured everything out. He set every plan he had in motion, hoping one would finally hit, and started things off with a basic spell that barely used any mana. He actually went to Frozal and literally bowed his head to the floor just to get her to go with him. Her friend was totally down, so she quickly scanned the area to make sure nobody was watching. The moment she shuts the door, her jaw hits the floor because Abel is suddenly right behind her with a stack of papers. He hands her a magic circle to help her ace the big exam, but Frozel just stares him down with a massive frown. She made it clear that having someone else build your magic circles is totally useless, because mana comes from your soul, and since everyone's soul is unique, mages have to create circles that fit them perfectly. Abel knew this was basic stuff, but it only counts for the hard spells, because simple magic circles with one job can be shared and look exactly the same no matter who makes them. Frost reads the paper he handed her, but she clearly hates what she sees. So she scowls and asks her brother if the magic circle is written in some kind of secret code. Abel completely freezes up the moment Frochelle asks if he's actually become a heretic. She barely gets how most of this magic circle works, but one thing is super obvious to her. That magic circle he handed over literally breaks every single rule of magic. God created the world, but the real problem isn't that the magic breaks the rules. It's that if anyone sees this paper, they'll think it's totally forbidden heresy. Abel wasn't backing down and asked what would happen if he actually found a mistake in the primordial series. Frozel cut him off immediately, telling him that's literally impossible. Abel breathed a huge sigh of relief when Frozel finally gave in, because she seriously thought her brother had lost his mind, and now she needed him to explain the logic behind this magic circle, since she couldn't even activate it without knowing how it worked. Abel told them it wasn't even necessary and just dipped. A bit later, Abel got totally lost in his own head. Believe it or not, you can actually use magic with 0 mana because that power comes straight from your soul. Mages basically turn their souls into mana to cast magic, and Frosul says that while everyone has a soul, using up too much energy will literally kill you, so the big difference between mages and regular people is just how much soul power they're packing. Abel has way less soul energy than a normal mage, and since he's already at his limit, losing even a tiny bit would be game over. But even if he's totally out of mana, he can literally burn his own soul to get more power. This article breaks down the insane risks of using magic without mana, but everyone totally ignored it. A few years ago, he found out Therian actually tried to test it himself, but he had to quit instantly because even the weakest ignition spell sucked out enough energy to almost kill him. But he's pulling it off with his crazy science magic. It's honestly just way too crazy to even be real. Since his magic follows real-world physics, it barely uses any mana compared to the regular stuff. He'd come way too far to turn back now, so he decided to check it out himself, even though one wrong guess meant he was totally dead. There was no stopping it now, so he started turning his very soul into mana. It's sucking his energy dry, but then he lifts his hand and sees it's actually mana. Blood started pouring down, getting right in his eyes. Then he just jammed his finger right into the center of the magic circle. He screamed his head off but couldn't even make a spark, and he ended up crying because life is just a total struggle when you have 0 mana. He didn't know if his mana was totally gone, but he was definitely on the right track. Suddenly, his eyes snap wide as he remembers something huge. He bolted straight to his room and snatched up a bag of stones. He did the whole thing all over again, grabbing the stone and setting it on fire. Abel stays up way past midnight just to break down every single detail. He bolts to the shop to score some magic stones, leaving the owner completely stunned to see him. Abel cuts him off and asks if he's actually got the magic stone. The shop owner barely got anything, but he still snatched every last one. He claims he's just running a crazy experiment and the magic stone was hunting for a tiny bit of energy, a spark so small you could barely even see it. Their magic is super weak and useless for real spells, so they're basically just used as glowing streetlights until he discovers a crazy new way to use science magic. He's somehow pulling off magic even though he has absolutely 0 mana. Right then, he remembered his dad telling him to just give up because he'd never actually become a wizard. He's a total lost cause and nobody listens to his crazy ideas, and even though his dad told him to quit magic and get real, he was dead wrong because it actually worked. He finally did it. Magic was actually glowing right in his hand. Fast forward 2 months, and he's back at the shop to pick up another magic stone. This time around, the master hands him a massive bag stuffed with magic stones. He walked out feeling hyped with enough loot to last him a while, and since he finally mastered Ignite, he started grinding to create even more awesome spells. He uses science to recreate famous spells and make them even better. And even though he's still learning through trial and error, his magic gets way more overpowered every time he hits the books. Right then, he felt more hyped than ever, even though he still had a massive list of stuff to get done. He was down to his last cent and needed a plan fast or he was toast, especially with his stomach growling so loud he couldn't even remember the last time he actually ate. Out of nowhere, everything went pitch black, and he had no clue if the magic was just messing with him. Back at the shop, Mr. Canyon is busy walking a customer out the door. Suddenly, he heard a weird sound and whipped his head around to check it out. He saw Abel hit the ground and immediately started yelling his name. The old man just started cracking up, totally shocked that he actually passed out just because he was hungry. Abel felt super awkward and apologized, but Mr. Canane was actually worried he was sick and told him to just go all out and eat as much as he wanted. He sighed because Abel's dad totally cut him off and didn't hold back one bit. If he lands a job at that shop, he can hide his insane genius and be the only one who knows the truth. Having him there is a total game changer, and he even told them to send every single book order straight to him. Abel was totally shocked that Mr. Cannon let him read as much as he wanted, just because the shop was empty. And he was super grateful that the old man gave him such a sweet deal that the old man felt pretty bummed that he turned down the offer because of the Frozel situation. So he told him it was time to stop running and finally face the truth. He knew Abel had been obsessed with magic since he was a kid, and with all that talent and brain power, he just can't let go of the one thing that means everything to him. The truth is, he's got zero magic and needs to grow up. But Abel held back because he'd actually found a way to spark magic even when someone's power is at a total zero. The old man shut him up right away, and his eyes went wide when he was told to use his brains to help his sister since Frozel is a total natural. The old man froze when someone suddenly grabbed his hand, and those words sparked a wild idea in his head. He was heading off to join the Flame Academy of Magic. That's when Abel showed the old man his water list. He looked totally stunned. He was so hyped for Abel, and Abel actually started crying when he found out how proud Mr. Cannon was of him. He didn't even hesitate and just pulled him into a massive hug. Even though our guy could use magic, Mr. Cannon was still stressing out because that academy entrance exam is basically impossible and he was totally lost. Abel showed them he meant business, and the Flame Academy will pay for everything if they like what they see. Abel suddenly remembered that science book he wanted from the old man. As Mr. Cannon started to speak, Abel explained that the book actually talks trash about the original series. If the word gets... Mr. Cannon wouldn't let him buy the book because it was way too dangerous, so he told Abel to just ditch it quietly and keep his mouth shut about where he got it. To make matters worse, he was totally broke and couldn't even pay the entrance fee. Abel's jaw hit the floor when the old man asked if he had enough cash for the trip. After that, he heads straight over to Flame Academy. He always knew he'd have to come here one day to craft the Philosopher's Stone. But showing up as an actual exam candidate was a total shock he didn't see coming. Suddenly, a guy pops up to lead the examiners, explaining that once they sign up, they'll get their papers and get measured, so he needs to finish the registration right now. She was totally shocked when he told her his name, and then dropped the news that he never even went to middle school. Now it's time to see how much mana he's really packing, so he steps up to touch the magic artifact. As soon as he did that, her jaw completely dropped. He straight up asks her if there's actually a rule saying low mana means he's disqualified. The girl behind him totally lost her cool and started a huge scene, screaming when she saw Abel had 0 mana, which caught every examiner's eye as she ranted that this academy isn't for people who can't use magic. Abel calmly tells her that spying on his mana is super rude, but she just keeps doing it anyway. Abel straight up told her he doesn't owe her a thing because taking that exam is totally his call. He just backed off and shut her down before she could even speak. Then the announcer told the examiner to start passing out the match schedules. Grab your schedule and head straight to your group's arena, but keep a close eye on your number because if you miss roll call, you're disqualified and you'll have to win. Fights only end if someone gives up or the ref calls it, and these wins actually decide your rank and what class you'll get into. Next thing you know, he and all the other examiners jumped into the arena and the battle was on. Next up, we've got Kent Romero from Private Cristo Academy going head-to-head with Abel. Everyone was totally blown away when they found out he never even went to middle school. Kent was losing his mind because he got stuck with a guy who actually quit school. He looked down at Abel like he was total trash and started laughing right in his face. Abel looked around at the other students and realized they were all totally sleeping on him. He totally skipped school, and there's no way he can talk his way out of it. The judge gave the signal and the fight was finally on. He finally got his hands on the magic stone and started whipping the wind around. Kent spots that weird magic circle and the exact type of wind he's using. Then Abel totally blasted him with a massive magic attack. Kent just started laughing his head off right when, to him, that whole attack felt like nothing more than a light breeze. He was just about to turn around and leave, but then his eyes went wide in total shock. He was so freaked out that he couldn't even get a single word out. It was game over the second you hit the dirt. The judge was totally speechless and had no clue what was even going on. But he had to step up and announce that Abel took the win. Everyone was totally shook and had no clue what just went down. Everyone started freaking out because Kent just slammed into the floor out of nowhere, and while it felt like a quick breeze, they couldn't tell if it was actually air magic. The super elite Cristo Academy just got totally wrecked by a guy who's never even been to school and didn't land a single hit, so now everyone is losing their minds over. Once he walked out of the arena, he was low-key worried he might go way too far. Everything was going exactly how he planned, and it turns out his magic is actually insane in a real fight. He wasn't using any flashy moves or crazy special effects. All he did was take control of the air around him. But he wasn't just making a simple gust of wind. He actually pulled. The air is a mix of nitrogen and oxygen, and without that oxygen, we'd all be dead meat, a fact he only knows because he's a total science nerd. And not a single wizard even bothered to check it out. His mana bar hadn't even dropped. And while it'd be awesome to just breeze through every fight with air magic, he knew he wouldn't always get it this easy. He realized magic was 100 million times cheaper than usual, so even he could finally pull it off with 0 flaws. He figures out that magic actually rewrites the laws of physics from scratch instead of just tossing fireballs, but he still needs a massive amount of mana to make it happen. He was dying to see how many arenas the Flame Academy actually had, so he went for a walk to scope them all out. Frosel just steamrolls through 4 matches in a row without even breaking a sweat. The teacher was super hyped that she passed and made the school look good, and even though everyone expected her to take first place in the final round, he was actually more focused on this one weirdo who might end up fighting Frozum, so she really needed to watch her back. Her eyes shot open when the teacher revealed he used some mystery magic, never went to school, and supposedly had 0 mana during the test. The teacher caught her reaction, so she quickly faked a smile while thinking about his brother, even though she knew it was totally impossible. At the same time, Abel is jumping right back into the 3rd round. Everyone was staring at him now because he pulled the exact same move 3 times in a row. Now everyone's whispering about him like he's some kind of big mystery. He was dying to know how they figured out he had zero mania. He got his answer right away when his fourth opponent stepped up. Anya Adish from Cristo Academy, the same girl who caused a total scene back at the registration desk. She started roasting Abel for having zero class and told him his lame tricks wouldn't work on her at all. Abel was totally stunned when Anya revealed she'd been watching his old fights and called him out for using poison, but she shut him down before he could even defend himself. The match kicks off and he's already pulling those same moves before he even starts messing with the air. Anya saw it coming and used her magic to shut down his toxic traps in a heartbeat. So his poison is definitely gonna mess her up. Abel wasn't sure if he was dealing with poison, but it didn't even matter because her air barrier was blocking all his magic, so he switched things up and launched a massive ice spear. Anya was super hyped because he actually knew how to use some basic magic. She fires back with a fireball, but Abel shocks her by setting his ice spear on fire, making it explode right in her face instead of just melting like it's supposed to. But that's only if we're talking about a totally basic ice spear. She ended up getting beat down and slammed right into the dirt. She's completely stunned because ice spells shouldn't blow up without fire. But Abel stays quiet since he knew this theory was total garbage from the very beginning. Fire and water aren't even real elements since heat is just molecules moving around. And this blast happened because the ice turned into steam so fast that the pressure spiked while using the fireballs. Abel saw Anya literally crawling on the ground and told her she should just give up already. Anya was totally fuming and swore she'd absolutely wreck Abel, and he was so terrified he almost wet his diaper right then and there. Anya stood up and summoned a demonic phoenix spirit made of pure dark magic. He was totally blown away because the phoenix was covered in flames that never die and some seriously insane high-level magic. He sees her wounds have already vanished, and now she'll just insta-heal from every blow, which is crazy because Anya was already on a whole different level. Frozal watched from the sidelines with the other examiners and started to panic because she'd never seen Anya mess up this bad, making her seriously worried for her brother. Anya never thought she'd actually have to unleash her demonic spirit on someone like Abel. Anya flashed a creepy smile as she finally made a massive fireball and blasted it straight through Abel. Everyone else stayed totally focused, staring down that massive fireball. He quickly drew a magic circle in the air with his finger. He had to lock onto the target and figure out exactly how far and fast. Anya totally froze up when he lifted his hand and messed with gravity to strike back. He basically told them that every single thing pulls on each other with a force called gravity. The heavier something is, the stronger she gets, using the same massive force that makes everything fall to earth. He reads a science book about gravity and some vortex theory, but he decides to just ignore all that and go with magic instead. He spent forever drawing magic circles based on both theories, and after a ton of fails, his big test finally proved the truth. A moment later, the fireball just totally vanished into thin air, and just like that, it looked like Anya could finally move again. She's collapsed on the ground feeling totally hopeless, and Abel warns her not to move a single muscle. He even reached out his hand and told her she should just give up already. Anya totally lost her cool and started yelling random stuff to look strong, but honestly, she was so beat up she could barely even stand. The last guy tells her to save her breath and stop screaming, because in this spot, there's absolutely nothing she can do. Then he grabbed control of the wind and fired off a massive spell to finish the fight for good. He was shocked that a beat-up Anya could still call out her phoenix to block him, and he was low-key jealous that her bird cancels out special moves, so he decided to either wait for them to get tired or just keep on attacking. He's running on fumes now, but he's still got one final move to make. So he decided to blast them with lightning one more time. Anya's eyes went wide with total shock before she completely blacked out and hit the floor. Out of nowhere, Abel locked his eyes right on her. He's puking his guts out, and his hand is completely covered in blood. He didn't even care and just wiped it on his clothes, feeling like his stone body was way too weak. That move actually drains his soul for power, so he shouldn't spam that lightning strike again. But at least he pulled it off perfectly this time. The judges were totally stunned and didn't buy his crazy magic for a second, so they just assumed Anya passed out from being completely exhausted. Abel was super relieved that nobody realized it was lightning, especially since back then, nobody even knew you could summon it. If word gets out that he can actually use this power, it's gonna be a total disaster since everyone thinks he has zero magic. He rushes over to Anya to see if she's... A bit later, they finally made the call. He was the winner! He's already bagged 4 wins and locked in his passing grade, but he's still grinding for a perfect score since these points decide exactly where he'll rank in class. Abel looks super worried when he finds out the truth during his final round. It turns out the person he has to fight is actually his own little sister. He felt super awkward when his sister asked why he showed up, especially since Frozal looked ready to end him right then and there. He just said he wanted to catch her totally by surprise. Frozal wasn't buying any of his excuses, but before he could say another word, a voice yelled out that their duel was finally starting. She warned her brother that even though they're family, he shouldn't expect her to go easy on him. She instantly forms a massive fist and swings it right at them. But then it just froze, stopping barely an inch from Abel's face. Frozal screams at him for just standing there, but he explains that after 4 tough matches, he's not about to start a fight with his own little sister. Frozal got dead serious and told him that if he didn't start fighting for real, she'd totally hate his guts. I'm not gonna lie, hearing that news really bummed me out. Abel instantly whips out his air powers to end the fight fast, since he doesn't want to drag things out against his own sister. Frozal was totally caught off guard. She tried to speak, but the words just wouldn't come out. Abel smirks because he knows she has to stop for air to finish the spell, and that's exactly how he caught her in his trap. Suddenly, Frozal slammed right into the ground, catching him totally off guard. Pulling off a Sigil giant fist counter is insanely hard, and only the most elite mages can actually master it. He's totally caught off guard that she's already mastered it, and now he's panicking because he has no clue how to dodge. But it was way too late, and he was already getting tossed out. That massive fist slammed into him and he was knocked out cold. He completely locked up when he realized Frozal was actually having the time of his life during their fight. He scrambled up and begged for a break, but Frozal totally ignored him since he didn't have a scratch on him, while Abel just laughed even though his whole body felt like one giant bruise. He clutches his side, feeling a snapped rib, and realizes she's been totally holding back during all their training at home. Frozal asks about his tricks, but the nice breeze suddenly makes her lungs tighten as Abel explains it's just his latest research, and if she wants the full story, she's gotta give him a reward first. He gritted his teeth when he saw Frochelle use that silent spell again, knowing one more hit would seriously mess him up. He froze in shock as Frozal summoned 2 massive fists and trapped him between them in a split second. He dodged the hit and instantly started messing with gravity. Frozal was totally stunned when she saw Abel use gravity magic to lift himself straight into the air. He's actually got some insane magic skills, so she launches a massive wave of sharp rocks to hit him again. Abel was already set and waiting before that thing could even touch M. He flipped gravity on its head, leaving Frozal totally stunned as a bunch of rocks suddenly turned around and launched straight at her. So she instantly threw up a wall of earth to block the hit. Abel finally realized his sister was a total pro at earth magic. Her giant fist couldn't reach him that high, and he easily swatted away her flying rocks with gravity. feeling like he was totally untouchable in the sky. Now it's finally his turn to strike, and he kicks things off by playing Igniter. Frosel just stood there, totally frozen, staring at the massive explosion. The student couldn't believe his eyes when that massive dirt wall just blew up out of nowhere. To pull off an explosion that massive, you're gonna need a ton of firepower. After doing some digging, Abel figured out that explosions aren't actually about fire, but about the temperature spiking super fast. Heat's basically just molecules shaking and moving around like crazy. If you make everything vibrate fast enough, you can generate a massive amount of heat. That's how Abel pulls off explosions that regular magic users. He already blocked that giant's massive punch and a storm of flying rocks, and now he's hyped to see what other tricks his sister is hiding. He stares at the explosion and realizes that absolutely nothing is moving. He's starting to panic about his sister, so he keeps blowing up her phone with calls. His jaw dropped when Frosel summoned her Tower of Earth and made the whole thing start floating too. He's never actually seen anything like this with his own eyes before. His eyes go wide the moment she uses a silence affirmation spell to shut him up. He's feeling super on edge now that he's forced to strike back. Frosel actually starts smirking because he's finally getting a real deal magic fight. But she could tell he was a total noob who didn't even know the basics. She used magic to make herself super heavy so her kick would hit him way harder. And just like that, Abel slammed right into the ground. Frosel smirked because she could actually mess with gravity. Abel was having a totally wild dream, all about that insane fight against his own sister. He finally snaps awake, but he's in a totally random room he's never seen before. He thinks that epic magic duel was just a dream, but it was actually 100% real. He got super mad when Frosel chucked a pillow at his broken ribs, but when he suddenly jumped out of bed, he realized the pain was totally gone and he was 100% healed. Frosel explains it's all thanks to the Azov sword, a legendary relic from the sage Paracelsus with a super powerful blessing. This magic makes wounds heal instantly at the academy. That sword was the whole reason he picked this academy, but he never expected to feel its power this early, and his jaw hit the floor the second Frosel took a breath, and hyped him up for totally crushing the exam. They shared a fist bump and a huge grin, feeling totally stoked about what just happened. Her smile instantly vanished as she demanded to know how he pulled that off with 0 mana. You started shaking like crazy and were totally lost for words. He really wanted to tell her the truth, but he just found a secret that proves everything they knew was a lie. If he opens his mouth, everyone will treat him like a total traitor, especially since he can't just tell her and put her in danger, so he covers it up by lying that the machine glitched and showed 0 mana. Frosel was totally panicking because she was getting ticked off and his excuses weren't working, which was wild since he'd spent 14 years failing at magic only to suddenly have it work out of nowhere. She thinks he's a total heretic who's using a fake god's power to pull off magic tricks without even having a mania. Abel suddenly grabs her shoulder and tells her straight up that her brother is a total genius. He invented magic that barely uses any mana and runs on magic stones, leaving Frosel totally stunned because that should be impossible. She's totally annoyed that Abel is keeping her in the dark, but even if she's his sister, he's got secrets he just can't spill. He hoped Frosel would just buy his story since every mage keeps their secrets, and luckily, Frosel finally dropped the subject. She warned him to stop using that crazy magic because if the Inquisition thinks he's a heretic, they'll hunt him down, so he's got to stick to the basic spells everyone else uses. Abel had to stop and think because she was actually 100% right. He should have been way more careful if he actually wanted to reach his goal. He's wrecking everyone in magic and he's doing it all for his sister. Frosel turned to head out, but he stopped for a second just to say thanks, right when he was about to start bawling. She suddenly held out her massive fist to stop him from getting all emotional. The big initiation ceremony is only 2 weeks away, so Frozle finally decided it was time to head back home. Abel was basically disowned and couldn't go home even if he wanted to, so she told him to move into the dorms right away, and he was super stoked to finally focus on his magic without any distractions. Frozle asked if she could tell her dad that Abel got into Palm Academy, and while Abel was cool with it, he worried his father would look at him differently as they both headed home. It's been 3 whole days, and the academy is still a total ghost town. Since all the other rooms are locked for the ceremony, Abel's the only one there early and can finally focus. And while the food is top tier just like he expected, he still can. The lighting theory was way too confusing, and he was so glued to his book that he didn't even notice the girl standing right there trying to talk to him. He whipped around and nearly jumped out of his skin. My brain just went totally blank the second I saw how gorgeous she was. She's a new student just like him, and she grabs his hand to introduce herself as Maria or Abelia. She slides right into the seat next to him and asks where he went to middle school. But that just reminds him of how his opponent totally clowned on him during the entrance exam for never even going to school. Hiding it isn't gonna help anymore, so he just comes clean and tells the truth. Rhea was totally shocked and thought he was a natural, but Abel shut her down because he thinks he's straight up gifted. She was super annoyed that Abel had never even heard of the magic school she went to. Abel totally freaked out when she spotted the science book, so he lied and said it was just a basic guide, making her smile and think he was just a huge bookworm. She bragged about loving it too, but she was totally shocked when Abel said he's not into regular stuff like novels. It hit him that he hadn't talked this much to anyone in forever, besides his family or his boss at work. Moreo just stayed quiet, looking like he didn't have a single word left to say. Abel straight up asks if she's done with the questions so he can get back to his book, leaving a shocked Mireia to apologize and head out. A bit later, she's just sitting in the hallway, totally crying her eyes out. She showed up at Plum Academy early to make some new friends, but their first meeting was a total disaster. She chills out because she knows she's still got plenty of shots left. And get this, they actually go to the same school. Her eyes suddenly changed color like she was being possessed, and since she was right about Abel's creepy magic during the exam, they've got to find out if he's actually a heretic. Abel was totally lost in his book until a knock at the door caught him off guard, and he was shocked to see the letter they handed him was actually from Frozle. His jaw hit the floor when he saw that Frozle already ratted him out to their dad about the Flame Academy, and now his father was demanding he come back home. He starts to think their dad would have been crying happy tears seeing them finally make the family proud. He really thought his dad would say sorry for abandoning him, and he definitely would have cried if the old man just admitted he was wrong. His hype totally died when he read the next part of the note, where Frozle warned him to watch out because their dad was actually fuming. Abel rushed over to Mr. Cannon's shop, totally hyped to share the big news. The old man couldn't believe he actually pulled it off. He never thought he'd actually make it into that elite magic school. But now, he can finally nerd out on research all he wants, and Abel even started crying and spilled his tea when the old man brought up his dad. Frozle's letter makes Abel remember exactly how scary their dad's temper could be. He changed his mind and headed back home, thinking his dad should be super proud he got into the Flame Academy instead of being mad. He wasn't sure about heading inside, so he decided to hit up his sister first to get the full scoop. He throws the door open and freezes because his dad is already standing there looking dead serious. He snatched him by the shirt and dragged him straight into the office. Years have flown by since he first stepped inside. He looked at his dad and realized the man was straight up fuming. Then his dad asked him straight up if he even knew why he was so mad. Abel had no clue, and since he's the one who told him to join the academy, he has to keep his mouth shut about it. So he just figured it was all because he still hadn't found a job. His dad looked totally heartbroken. and he started totally fuming over that answer. He told Abel he was hitting rock bottom, and even though he hadn't even realized it and needed time to wrap his head around everything, he knew he couldn't just ignore it because He slammed his hand on the table and screamed that Abel was a total cheater. This is honestly so embarrassing. So even though Abel is stunned, he cuts his dad off and tells him he's dead wrong. He reveals he can actually use magic after all, but his dad suddenly snaps and grabs him by the shirt because he's convinced Abel is a total failure who will never pass the exam. Abel snapped and yelled at his dad that he absolutely needed magic. His dad told him to prove it right now by chanting the spell to summon a fireball. Abel was totally floored that out of all those insane spells, he actually chose a basic fireball. He really wanted to tell them he had his own version of this, but he couldn't explain it and just ended up apologizing instead. His dad totally flipped out, yelling that if he can't even make a fireball, he's never getting into that elite academy. To shut his dad up, Abel suddenly uses gravity to lift him straight into the air. His dad's eyes shot open, totally caught off guard. Abel couldn't summon a fireball, but he knew his gravity powers were the key to making this work. Wait, is his dad actually starting to look a bit dizzy? He's not buying it for a second and sees right through the trap. Abel was just lifting the whole thing up and down like it weighed absolutely nothing, until his head was spinning so hard he could barely stand. He sets his dad back on the ground and demands he finally admit that his magic is the real deal. Abel was totally shocked to see the wig on the floor, and his eyes went wide with pure terror. He looked at his dad and realized his old man was the one who dumped this whole burden on him. It turns out he was actually just a balding dude. He was totally lost for words, so he just handed him a wig, and his dad slapped it on right away and told him not to sweat it. His dad was totally shocked, asking how he was pulling off magic when he literally had 0 mana. Abel was shaking and had no idea how much to spill, worried that the truth would make him look like a total freak, but before he could even think of an excuse, his eyes went wide when his dad suddenly started sobbing and begging for forgiveness. His dad reveals that Abel has been totally obsessed with magic since he was just a little kid. He crushed the hardest magic books like it was nothing and was hyped for Abel to become a legend. But his whole world fell apart when he realized the kid didn't have a single drop of magic in him. Lately, he's been hating his life and cursing his luck more than a few times. Abel didn't back down. He fought through that brutal year and totally crushed it, proving everyone wrong who thought he'd have to quit just to save himself. Abel was totally shocked when his dad finally admitted he messed up and actually apologized to him. His dad finally cracks a smile the moment he forgives him. He can't even remember the last time his dad smiled like that. The questions about his magic just kept coming, and he started wondering if he'd really told his dad everything, or if he even wanted to help anymore. He was praying the guy would trust him instead of calling him a heretic, but he was too scared to say the original series was a lie, since he had no clue what would happen if he didn't buy it. So he just told everyone his mana finally kicked in, but he kept the rest a secret because he couldn't prove he wasn't a heretic and pushing his dad was way too. His dad thought he had 0 mana, but Abel explained it wasn't actually empty since he'd figured out a way to use magic with almost nothing. He wasn't sure if his dad would buy his story, but once the old man started crying, he knew he was finally accepted. He walked out of the office and let out a heavy sigh, feeling totally guilty that his dad just bought him a fake alibi like it was nothing. He was just about to head out when Frozal suddenly popped up out of nowhere. He was getting all choked up because his little sister actually cared, but those tears vanished the second she started screaming at him. But Frozal prankly tells him straight up to act like he doesn't even know her at school. She told Abel they need to act like total strangers since Gilbert is such a common name, and she even made him promise to deny they're related if anyone starts snooping around. The second guy got super mad and demanded answers, but he looked worried when Frost admitted he was about to cause a massive scene that would drag her into the mess if anyone found out they were related. Abel tried to explain everything, but Frosel totally tuned him out. Just before she heads out, Froel warns him to be super careful with his magic and not pull any dangerous stunts. Abel tried to keep the conversation going, but his sister totally ignored him and just kept on running. Right after that, every single student who actually passed the test, the whole squad finally met up at Plum Academy. This guy goes by the name Alec Orson. The academy director welcomed the class and told them that since they survived that brutal entrance exam, they need to push themselves even harder and compete to become top-tier mages. He gave a huge welcome to every student who passed the test, including Abel. Abel was bored out of his mind since he hadn't been to school in forever, and sitting still for this long, boring speech was basically torture for him. Suddenly, the student council president stepped onto the stage and introduced herself as Judith Balzar. Once that boring speech finally wrapped up, he sprinted over to the board to see which class he got stuck in. He spotted his name on the list and saw his sister actually landed a spot in Class A. He's gotta act like a total stranger, so it's a win that they're in different classes. But he almost walked off without noticing Anya looking for him, and even though she followed and called his name, Abel was just completely spaced out in a daydream. She totally lost her footing and wiped out right on top of Abel. Hana's eyes go totally wide when she sees exactly where they're placed. She looked away totally embarrassed, jumped to her feet, and started yelling at Abel for getting her stuck in Class C. The bull was totally confused about where it met Anya and started acting like it had a massive grudge against him. Anya snaps at him, shouting that Class A and Class C are total opposites because of their grades, but Abel just shrugs it off, reminding her that the entrance exam scores were what decided their classes in the first place. He was totally confused about the results since he only lost one round to his sister, thinking maybe his lack of magic got him stuck here. And he was so deep in thought about his goals that he completely ignored Anya, which made her super annoyed. She kept screaming her head off and wouldn't stop until Abel finally remembered. The person who totally crushed her score on the entrance exam. Abel talked some serious trash, telling her that even a cool demon summon doesn't change the fact that she lost. So Anya started screaming for a rematch. Once she finally shows what she's really capable of, a guy like him won't stand a chance, and Abel feels like a total loser for thinking she was just being reckless. Her voice was so loud it actually silenced the whole crowd, so he just bolted since talking to her was a total waste of time. He headed back to class, just praying Anya wouldn't follow him because he seriously couldn't handle her anymore. But the moment he sat down, he got a massive shock. Mary suddenly pops up to say hi, but she's totally confused when he doesn't even recognize her. She says they chatted in the cafeteria, and since his mind is a total blank, he figures she might actually be telling the truth. He remembers every single detail about magic but totally blanked on her, so he apologized and said he was hyped to have a friend in class, which made her so happy she sat right next to him. Then, their teacher Arise introduced herself as Selin Vanna, telling the class she was hyped to work with them as she started breaking down their schedule. Abel was so zoned out he didn't even realize class was over until Maria told him everyone was already heading out. He glances back and forth just to double-check. He was totally lost in the teacher's boring science talk about the academy. So he stood up and apologized to Maria because he'd be a total loner if she hadn't called out to him. The last person told him to slow down and act like a total bookworm so the other students would catch him looking completely shocked. He asked who she was again, making her totally snap as she shouted her name one more time. He quickly apologized and said it was just a joke to help him fit in since he's bad at making friends. But Maria definitely wasn't buying his excuse. While they're on the move, he asks Mireille where they're even headed. Abel's jaw dropped the second she told him their teacher was actually gonna show up. They finally gave me back the legendary holy blade, Azat. They finally made it to the spot. The teacher explains that this sword is usually totally off limits, So they better look close since it's their only chance to see the blade that's been supercharging their healing and keeping everyone alive. Basically, it's almost impossible to die inside the academy, so she tells them to stop holding back and just start taking each other out. Abel and the rest of the students were totally blown away by what she just said. He thought it was way too brutal, but honestly, that's just the reality of the sword. He definitely didn't think he'd see this so early, but this was the exact reason he joined the academy. His only goal was to finally create the Philosopher's Stone. His powers came from that stone, so this sword is massive proof the Philosopher's Stone is real, and even though studying it would lead him right to it, he's honestly got no clue what to do next. There was no way they'd let a random student touch that sword, but just as he reached for it, someone screamed at him to stop before he set off the magic trap circle. Maria's jaw dropped when she saw that sword, and while Abel totally agreed, his real problem was figuring out how to actually get his hands on it. He already sensed 3 layers of traps, but there are definitely more sneaky ones hiding in this room packed with all sorts of crazy gadgets. He's sure he'll get it eventually. Otherwise, what was even the point of joining this school? Mori looked over and finally realized the guy was just messing with him. He came back with a big smile and told her she was totally right. Once the orientation finally wrapped up, everyone headed straight back to their classroom. Just as Selena was heading out, she reminded everyone that the real work starts tomorrow and every team leader has to report their results, leaving Abel clenching his fist because he completely zoned out, and he was totally caught off guard when Murray walked right up to him and asked what the plan was for those 4 teams their teacher talked about. He totally zoned out again, but seeing everyone huddled in groups made him realize a match was finally starting. He was totally lost because they hadn't even had a single class before being tossed into team battles. But then he remembered Selena saying, "The sword of Ezoth let them kill each other." He honestly expected this place to be way more professional so he could just focus on his research. But he was totally lost watching everyone chat like pros before they even knew each other's names. He was super relieved he wasn't on Frosel's team. But then, a sudden noise caught his attention as his classmates swarmed the bulletin board to check out everyone's mana levels. Maria asks him to team up right then and there, even though she's totally running on empty. He gave her a polite smile and turned her down, which totally set Maria off because she got the wrong idea. But right as he went to explain, someone who'd found out the truth suddenly screamed his name. The board showed he was totally broke, and everyone started talking trash about him. She didn't want to team up with him at all, and Maria was left totally confused. She figured her mania was the lowest, and if it wasn't for Abel, she would have been the very last one left. He figured more mana was always the move, especially since they were all strangers and the teams would probably be picked based on who had the most power. He tells Maria to relax since he's just getting tossed into the last team, so he bails on the room to get back to his research. But first, he hits up the library too. He was just about to head out when Maria shouted his name, blowing his cover as the guy with 0 mana and making the whole class start gossiping. They stopped dead in their tracks the second the student council president showed up, and I was on the hunt to find him. They walked together holding hands while every student in the place just stared. He calls her president, but Judith tells him to drop the title and just use her name. The innocent genius just told her to let go of his hand. Judith just let out a little laugh and stepped even closer. A little while ago, Judith was the one who actually sent out the invite. She straight up asked him to team up with her. Everyone was losing it because they knew the top rookies get picked for the student council on the first day of school every single year. Everyone was left wondering why out of all people, he was the only one who could pull it off. Abel ditches the crowd and heads off on his own, totally ignoring the student council since he's sure the president and the others won't even bother chasing him down. He's got 0 time for anything but his research, and that's the only reason he even joined that academy. Judith totally catches him off guard by grabbing his arm and asking him to that student council meeting one more time. He rejected her since he wasn't a star student and didn't care about the council, but Judith grabbed his hand with puppy eyes and told him she was actually into him for real. She confesses that his performance during the entrance exam totally hooked her, and now she's dying to know what kind of magic he's actually using. Abel kept quiet since his air powers looked super sketchy, so he told her it was a secret and decided to be way more careful, especially since a D-class Muir like him couldn't risk showing off his tricks while acting like he totally lost the last round anyway. He was totally caught off guard when Judith asked if he was related to Frosul, just because they shared a last name, but he quickly told her she definitely wasn't his sister. He asked if his sister was actually that famous, and Judith told him that back in high school, Frozal was the top student and a total legend in Egan. She called Frosul a total combat prodigy who sniffs out weaknesses in a heartbeat, and Abel was so salty about her success that he told Judith she should have just invited his sister instead. She was super into him, but as soon as he thought his sister was coming, he totally panicked and rejected the student council just so he could bolt. Judith froze for a split second and she offered Abel a look at her workshop, and he was totally shocked she'd actually let him see her private setup. Showing someone your workshop is like giving away all your secrets, which is a huge deal. And since Judith is the student council president, you know she's got some serious skills. She flashed a huge grin the moment Abel finally agreed with her. She didn't just bring him to her workshop, she even asked him to grab some lunch. While they're walking, Judith asks Abel about the different names for magic power, explaining that mages have way more energy than normal people, and that extra power is what lets them cast spells. Abel was totally caught off guard by the question, especially since it was something so basic even a little kid would know it. Judith wondered what would happen if you used your soul as a battery for magic, and while Abel thought it would just kill you, Judith argued the soul would normally block the spell, but Abel insisted that someone with enough willpower could actually force their soul to burn for a massive power boost. Judith loved his answer, so she asked if he was dying to know if someone could actually cross the line and use that soulless fuel. Abel admits he's curious, but he's already played it out in his head and knows that having insane magic is totally pointless if you don't stay alive. Then they head straight into the student council room, which is actually where Judith keeps her workshop. Out of nowhere, this guy pops up and is totally shocked to hear Judith is showing him her workshop. But he starts crying because she already promised that to Abel. Judith didn't even hesitate and just swung the door wide open. Abel is super confused by the pitch-black room and heavy curtains, but Judith explains she's just practicing her summoning magic and tells him not to freak out at what he's about to see. His eyes fly open as pure terror hits him. Then out of nowhere, a huge swarm of moths just floods the place. He figured cats and birds are the go-to choice for familiars because smart animals actually get what you want and can do way more for you. Judith saw he wasn't a fan, but she thought they were actually pretty cute and preferred using bugs over animals since their souls are way simpler. She's currently figuring out a wild way to turn her soul into pure magical energy. Abel's eyes go wide when she realizes she's using other people's souls instead of her own. And this soul-shifting magic is basically a total invasion. He let out a huge sigh because he had zero clue how to use summoning magic, and he was totally floored when Judith admitted her perfect spell was a total fail, barely making a tiny spark when it was supposed to pump out massive amounts of power. Abel was totally shocked that trading his soul barely gave him any magic, and just as he tried to grab some science papers on the table for answers, Judith blocked him and wouldn't let him look until he explained his new powers. She laughed, snatched up her notes, and told Abel it was finally lunchtime as they headed out together. The second they stepped out, a bunch of students were already there waiting for Judith. She introduces herself right away, and Vice President Hal Galbo tells everyone to just kick back and enjoy. While the other students started whispering to each other, Abel just hung back and kept eating his food. Talking to people is basically a nightmare for him, so when he saw Frozala was gone and the president was busy, he tried to sneak out. But someone called his name just as he was about to make his escape. The guy shakes hands and introduces himself as Pablo Suarez, and Abel is totally shocked when Pablo tells him to give it his all as a student council candidate. Abel made it super clear he didn't want to join the council, but he totally froze when Pablo revealed this meeting was actually a tryout for the job. He straight up told him the president dragged him there, leaving Pablo totally shocked and grilling him for all the tea on his relationships. All about the president and his crazy high rank in the class. He was shocked to find out Abel was only in Class D, but then Judith walked over and asked if they were having a blast. Abel looked all over for his sister and asked the president where she was, but the prez just figured Abel was interested because Frozel totally wrecked him in a fight. Pablo wasn't feeling the vibe at all, so he just shut Abel out and went straight to the president to introduce himself. He was blown away that a Class D student like Abel even got into that secret meeting. But then Judith announced he was actually one of the candidates. Galbo started freaking out. He even starts clowning on Abel for being in Class D, and while Judith says she really wants him to join, she won't force him just as Abel is about to speak up. But Halbo just glared at him, looking absolutely furious. He asked if it was really true that he had zero power, and suddenly Pablo and all the other candidates turned to stare him down. Abel says it's true, but he's got a way different version of what actually happened. He said his magic was always super low and he felt sick during the test, so the results were probably wrong, but Galbov wasn't buying it at all. He told them he spammed that spell so many times before the test that it totally glitched the results. So he's just going to use that as his go-to excuse whenever anyone asks. The second they saw his magic power was only 20, they started arguing and totally roasting the guy. Pavlo butts in and challenges Abel to a duel, making Abel super annoyed since he already told the president he didn't even want the job. Abel didn't even have time to react before Judith suddenly clapped her hands, and he was totally down for the challenge. She immediately called for a duel between Abel and Pablo and stepped in to be the witness. Abel repeats that he's not fighting, but Judith shuts him down by saying, "Academy rules force you to accept any duel," and even though the teacher already explained this, Abel was totally spacing out. Pablo flashed a creepy smirk and told him to bring everything he's got. Pablo breaks down the stakes for the fight, starting with what happens if Abel wins. He's heading straight to Class A, while Pablo gets stuck in Class D. If Pablo wins, Judith is actually going to let him join the student council. She promised that if he proves he's got the skills, he's in. Then the president asks Abel if he'd draw. Pablo totally lost it the second he heard that guy hated it. He started wondering if Abel even had what it takes to be there. But Judith reminded them that Class A isn't just about top grades. It's about building a reputation that follows you for the rest of your life as a mage. Everyone at school trains like crazy because moving up is super rare. But Abel finally has a shot to jump from Class D straight to Class A, so Pablo shoves him into the duel since the president herself personally invited him. Abel didn't even argue and just rolled with it, while Judith, Galbo, and all the other candidates were already there waiting for them. Abel was honestly just glad that Frozel didn't show up. While everyone else is grinding to get into Class A, he just wants to stay invisible. So joining the student council is a hard pass, and he's convinced that losing this duel is his only move. He just wants the president to leave him alone. So after seeing how much she expects from him, he decides to lock his secret magic away. He's just going to use a totally basic item with almost zero magic, making him look like any other regular student. Pablo was yapping way too much, so he decided to just tank the hit and pretend to be knocked out. He raised his hand to strike first, summoning a sharp ice spear and launching it straight at Pablo. The other guys totally clown on him for using such a basic spell. That's when he finally lets loose with his erasure spell. The other guys were totally hyped, but Abel was shook because he knew they just made a massive mistake. His icy spear ripped right through Pablo's body and didn't even vanish. His magic is actually built on science and is nothing like the normal stuff, so even though that ice spear looks basic, it's a completely different kind of power. So basically, there's absolutely no way to ever wipe it out. Pablo could have blocked that ice spear the easy way, but he chose to be extra and do it the hard way, while Abel just sighed because he missed his chance for a killing blow. Pablo was shaking like crazy and looked like he was losing his drive to win, totally stunned that this was actually happening. Abel got super worried and made him get up to show everyone in Class A exactly how strong he really is. Pablo yelled at him to wait, sounding totally ticked off. Pablo was totally confused why he couldn't stop Abel's ice spear when its structure was supposed to be perfect. Abel was totally stressing out as he tried to think of some basic magic he could use. He doesn't think Pablo is just making stuff up and figures he's probably just using his race's special magic. Out of nowhere, he jumps up and pulls out his sword. Then he just straight up slammed right into Abel. He was totally rattled and kept ducking Pablo's blade, getting so mixed up that he had no idea which move to use next. His eyes shot open when it hit him. He didn't even need to win this thing. Abel was totally wiped out on the floor, so Gable called the match and told the healers to patch up both him and Pablo. That last dude is looking seriously wiped out. Abel was totally passed out, and Gable was actually looking pretty hyped about it. I'm super hyped about how that fight turned out because Pablo is a total beast and nobody in Class D can even touch him. Pablo walks right up and asks if he's finally in the council, and Gable is totally hyped to let him join. He tried asking Judith, but she totally wasn't feeling it. She told Gable that the final choice was totally up to him. Then she just turned around and walked away like it was nothing. After that crazy duel, she looks like she's totally about to collapse. She can basically figure out everything just by taking one look at it. She was the only one who actually saw it happen, especially since Pablo's launch went off perfectly without a single glitch. Abel's spear looked like regular ice, but since it phased right through the target, it definitely wasn't actually made of ice. During the test, he was too far away to see Abel's magic circle, but she noticed it looked like some weird ancient script that was totally impossible to analyze. Even if this is some kind of code, she can't even find where it starts. And despite seeing way crazier magic from famous wizards before, this power is giving her a seriously bad vibe. She was totally hyped to see Abel show off his insane magic again at the entrance exam. She's dying to see more of his magic and wants to feel every bit of it for herself. After everything went down, Abel finally crashed and got some much-needed sleep at the hospital. It's a huge relief he's not hurt, but after getting totally wrecked, he's convinced his chances of joining the student council are officially zero. He remembered Pablo's attack and realized that just like Frosel, he was a sitting duck if anyone got in his face, so since his Thunderstrike wasn't finished yet, he doesn't even care about getting stronger at magic because he's totally locked in on finding a missing clue for his research. He stepped into the library and felt like he'd finally found paradise. He looks around at all these insane magic books he's never read, and honestly, he just wants to crash here and wake up in this place forever. He cleared his head to stay focused on his goal, and as he looked around, he realized there weren't just magic books on the shelves, but regular novels too. He was making huge moves with his magnet research, but he suddenly hit a massive wall. He sighed because science isn't always perfect and experiments are hard to prove. And even though he nailed the gravity theory, it's honestly just making his head spin now. So one day, he decided to switch things up and look at it from the opposite direction. He's standing right on the shelf, eyeing a book called A Survey of Spirit Magic. Basically, this magic lets you control spirits to make all sorts of crazy stuff happen. He rushed back to his dorm and started reading. But the stuff about magnetism was a total letdown. He just laid there on his bed, replaying every single detail in his head to figure it all out. He's learned the hard way that the stuff everyone believes is usually a lie, but his own secret is just getting even crazier. He stayed far away from the magnets and decided to figure that mystery out later. Then he just closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. The second he stepped into class, his day finally kicked off. Maria rushed over to say hi and told him the big news. They were officially on the same team. He figured the seeding was based on raw power, but he's bummed out because this post-apocalyptic academy is just full of random scraps and old stories, so he's just trying. Maria is totally stoked, but Abel looks like he couldn't care less. He saw she was way too fired up, so he asked if she was aiming for A-class too. He was totally shocked when Maria said she didn't care about being the best. She just didn't want to get kicked out of school. Maria tells him the top ranks just feel the pressure, but since they're at the very bottom, there's literally nowhere left to fall. Abel was totally lost and had no clue if it was actually for real. Abel felt like a total idiot when he realized losing meant getting kicked out, probably because he completely ignored the teacher's speech earlier. He really should have taken yesterday's duel more seriously if he wanted to actually feel safe sitting in class right now. Ria was straight up fuming when he broke his promise too. You don't get kicked out after just one loss because you actually get 3 chances before you're gone for good. Out of nowhere, this guy named Victor Forns shows up. Maria tells Abel that he's actually one of their teammates. Abel can tell right away that this dude is super on edge. He just brushed him off and walked away, right as their teammate Sienna Arashina showed up. Maria introduces her to Abel, but things are about to get really weird. She was totally in her own world and didn't even notice they were there. Abel's totally stressing over his squad, but then their teacher walks in, scribbles on the board, and kicks off the class discussion. Abel was grinning because he loved practicing magic even if it wasn't really helping him yet, and the teacher explained that real power actually comes straight from your soul. Abel was totally locked into his research, trying to make his power work even better, while everyone else was just daydreaming about what to eat for lunch. But Maria surprises him by asking him to grab lunch instead. Abel was totally confused since they were supposed to have a strategy meeting, but Maria explained that Victor didn't want one, and Sienna was already fast asleep at her desk. 2 of them tried to wake her up because everything was falling apart. Lunchtime hits, but this thing is still totally passed out and refuses to wake up. They ditched her right there and headed straight to the cafeteria. Maria was super stressed and just wanted to talk things out before the big day, especially since the practical test was only a week away and Abel was wondering if they'd actually get to train at this crazy school. He kind of saw this coming, since being a mage means you're always waiting for things to go south. It's all because of these fake gods called the 8 misfortunes. Only the mages can actually stand up to these fake gods, so they better get ready for the total chaos that's coming. Abel was worried he'd only be fighting students, but when he asked Maria if something was up, she stayed quiet before telling him he was dead wrong, because schools only care about having the strongest mages to boost their rank. When people go to war, it's the mages who actually clash instead of the disaster itself, because magic is the most powerful weapon humans have ever had. Maria's eyes go wide when Abel cuts in to explain that owning magic and actually using it are 2 totally different things. He's going back to the basics to figure out how everything really works at its core. She grinned seeing that Abel really was a weirdo, but since he looked lost, she quickly apologized and switched the topic to their big plan. When Maria asked how strong his magic really was, Abel's jaw hit the floor, but there was no way he was telling her the truth. Finding out Maria tames demons blew his mind, so he straight up asked her which ones she's got. He was seriously stoked when Maria asked him to hang out in her room after class so she could show it off. Demon tamers are super rare, so seeing one in person is a huge deal, And when Maria asked what the president wanted, Abel just played it off by saying the guy thought he was some top. Next, they all headed straight over to Maria's room. The last guy didn't waste a second and started chanting the spell to bring out the demon. Abel was totally confused because instead of a scary demon, he was just looking at a cute little ball. Whether it's a spirit or a demon, you can summon them in two ways. Possession, where they jump inside your body, or invocation, where they show up right in front of you in the flesh. He leaned in, totally shocked to see it right there, and he just couldn't stop himself from reaching out to touch it. A massive jolt of electricity zapped him, and he crashed straight to the ground. Maria says sorry and warns them that if anyone else touches the demon, they're gonna get blasted by lightning. She didn't waste a second and threw her hands up to heal him. Abel was totally confused because her healing spell completely glitched out and didn't work right. He told her everything was totally fine and that he'd definitely be back on his feet soon. Maria panics and sprints to the store for a healing potion, but Abel just sighs because compared to that earth giant, a little numbness is literally nothing. He pulls himself up, checks his dead arm, and stretches it out to get the feeling back. He realized he was all alone, so he scanned the room to see if the demon was still lurking there, or if it had already snatched Maria and bailed. That's when he spots a piece of paper just sitting there on the table. He was totally caught off guard when he realized it was actually a scientific article. He thought Maria was being way too reckless for just walking away and leaving it like that. He spotted something weird on the paper and checked to make sure nobody was watching. But when he took a quick peek, it was all in some secret code that looked like a total mess of symbols. To crack the code, you've got to find the secret rule, especially if magic is involved. The magic circle needs the description of the god who made the world, so he's hunting for the exact spot where someone swapped it out. He finally found the magic circle, but he had no clue how it was actually put together. Right as he was looking over the papers, he suddenly realized something was totally off. He was totally caught off guard when Maria suddenly showed up and asked what he was even doing. He nervously mumbles about being bored, but honestly, he's just happy he can still stand up. Maria asks him if he's actually seen the crazy news in the paper. He was totally speechless, and since he's a terrible liar, he just told them he barely even looked. The whole thing was written in a secret code he couldn't even crack, and now Maria is straight up accusing him of heresy. She quickly fires off her spirit orb, the Sphere of Chaos. Suddenly, everything around them went pitch black. Abel was totally lost and had no idea where they'd just ended up. He was totally freaked out, dangling in midair while the whole world flipped upside down. This power was way past regular magic, and Rhea revealed her name was Anthropos, one of the false gods. Abel's eyes went wide the second he heard her name, realizing that Maria definitely wasn't the sweet girl she pretended to be. This isn't just some forbidden stuff. It's way more insane than that. He's fighting back exactly like the person who put a curse on his sister's life. Anthropos looks him right in the eye and asks for his name. He tried to use his regular name, but God told him to stop playing dumb because she wanted to hear his true divine name. He was totally freaking out and had no clue what to do, knowing a fake name wouldn't save him, and he definitely couldn't keep up the act of being some clueless heretic. He was up against a total fake of a god, and using any half-baked moves would be a death sentence. He confirmed his name is Abel, and that he's got zero connection to that fake god. Anthropos slowly shut his eyes, and the second she finally opened her eyes, Gabla's hand literally just dropped off in an instant. Even though he was in total pain, he kept insisting he was just a normal guy. The creature finally gets what's going on. His hand just snaps back to normal without any magic or warning, so he figures this has to be the power of a false god. He knows if he plays this right, he'll get the answers he needs, so he demands to know why she called him a heretic. He told her he'd seen her research and noticed her magic was built way differently than normal, leaving Anthropos totally speechless since nobody ever catches that. She walks right up to Abel to ask who he is, and he gets all nervous, saying he's just a totally normal magician. Anthropos wasn't buying it because people with zero magic shouldn't be able to cast anything. So he freaked out and convinced himself the test was just broken since the guy still had a tiny bit of power. That fake god wasn't buying it for a second. She realized he had zero magic and his powers were totally weird, and Abel knew right then that she saw right through him. There's no way she's a fake goddess. That's just impossible. He explains that his magic works on a totally different system, not those basic primal sequences. Abel cut her off and said it was all just science, making Anthropos' eyes go wide with shock. Abel was totally thrown off because she knew that word, making it feel like she was straight up reading his mind. He's totally convinced that Anthropos was actually talking to someone else in secret. His jaw drops the second she actually starts speaking up for herself. And just like that, the pitch-black darkness is totally gone. Next thing they knew, they were right back in that room. Rhea tells him the fake god will let him live, but only if he bows down and surrenders. Abel stood up to see if this was actually Maria, the girl he'd been talking to this whole time. So it turns out she really is Maria, and she's just a shell for that fake god, which totally blows Abel's mind since he never knew a fake god could possess someone. He wasn't sure if a demon was taking over his body, and he had no clue that fake god was lurking right under his nose the whole time. He asks Maria how she figured out his secret, and his jaw drops when she says she just saw him using it during the exam. His magic was super weird and all about crazy lightning spells. She didn't trust him one bit and was sure he was a total heretic. Abel kept thinking back to how much by the time Maria even walked up to him, she'd already scoped him out completely. He asks what the deal is and what he'd actually have to do if he started working for her. He had no choice but to follow along, because saying no meant he was a dead man. Maria tells him he's safe for now, as long as he obeys her orders, but if he leaks her secret to anyone, she'll kill him and every single person he told. Abel knew that if he told anyone the truth about her, they'd just think he was totally making it up. But if that's true, why would a fake god even bother showing up to class? He was totally shocked when Maria straight up told him she was doing it all just to save every student. He finally locked in because he realized every single student was about to be wiped out. He landed in a massive mess, but it actually turned out to be his big break. He barely knows anything about this fake god since they're mostly just old myths. But he's curious to see if she's like the other fake gods out there, and if he realized he was still holding Maria's work, so he asked her what the research was even about. His jaw hit the floor when Maria suddenly handed him this, but he's got no clue what it actually means. Rhea's not lifting a finger to help, so he's gotta figure this whole mess out solo. Maria was just chilling on her bed when out of nowhere, a voice started talking to her. She asks the voice if it's safe to let Abel go since they can always kill him later. But the voice shuts her down, saying it's not time yet, and that Abel is totally hooked on what's happening. Maria was actually starting to get super into the science Abel mentioned earlier. The voice explains this is an ancient, forgotten human power, and while he doesn't have the full story, he knows Abel never stopped studying those books, making Maria smirk because even a fake god doesn't know everything. Her eyes snap wide as that voice reminds her that things are about to get crazy. And every step she takes brings her closer to the world she's always wanted. She gripped her arms tight, looking like she was totally scared of what was about to go down. Abel stayed up all night trying to crack the code, but he still has zero clue where to even start. Morning rolled around, so he decided to head out and hit up his classes. He was still trying to crack the code while walking, but out of nowhere, Maria was already standing right behind him. He actually thought she was finally acting like her normal self again, and they just smiled like yesterday's drama never even happened. Maria tried to speak up, and he legit thought a fake god had invaded the school, But he was totally wrong because she was actually just talking about team combat, and since no one would, his mind went totally blank, leaving Maria super confused by the awkward silence. He cooked up a wild plan to get this guy on his side, even though he's totally dead set against it. He scans the room, spots Victor, and heads straight for him. He snapped at him to start pulling his weight, because like it or not, they're a team, and he needs to do his part. Victor was totally ticked off and snapped that he didn't need a team, especially not with a pathetic loser like this guy. Abel finally lost his cool and just went for it. He grabbed his magic stone and instantly summoned a sharp spear of ice. Victor freaked out when his ice pick stabbed right through the table, but luckily it stopped just an inch away from his hot dog. But a tiny shard still managed to slice right into his leg. This made him totally snap, so he cursed Abel out and even threatened to take him out for good. Abel wasn't scared one bit and even told them to step outside to settle the score. Victor stepped outside to fight, and while Maria was totally panicking and begging him to stop, Abel shut her down because they needed him, and if he didn't cooperate, Abel had a backup plan ready. Plus, dueling was just how things worked at this academy, even though Maria kept insisting they should just try talking instead. Maria wasn't even listening when Abel leaned in to whisper that she tried to kill him yesterday, so she better stop acting all innocent. She warned him not to totally wreck the place as they followed Victor outside, where Abel told her the body still hadn't revealed any clues. Maria's grinning because she never thought Abel could actually pull this off, but then they find Victor, and he is absolutely losing it. He pointed right at Abel and told him he wasn't teaming up, saying Abel would just hold him back and should stay out of his way since he was way too full of himself. But then you look at Victor, and things are a totally different story. Abel started feeling like dead weight and asked Maria for the truth, but she just told him his strength was a measly 35, the third lowest in the whole group, and rejected him on the spot, making Victor absolutely lose his mind. Abel chucked an ice spear to shut him up, but Victor reacted fast and blocked it with a wall of dirt. He's totally laughing and mocking Abel's move, so Abel tries to talk him into a deal instead. If Victor can't block this next move, he's got to stop the attitude and finally start working with the team. Victor just laughs in his face, making fun of how weak and basic his magic really is. Abel finally locked in and started chanting a whole bunch of spells. Victor got warped back and he was totally losing his mind because he'd never seen such high-level magic before. He quickly throws up an earth wall, but there are just way too many of them for him to stop. He totally blacked out and lost the fight, so Maria and Abel rushed over to check on him. Abel was just trying to see how much power he could handle, but he definitely went overboard. Abel was struggling to carry Victor because he was seriously heavy, and even though he wanted to use his gravity powers, he had to stick to basic magic since other students were watching. He finally got Victor to the medical wing, but Maria was low-key stressing that he wouldn't be able to pull off that same stunt in Siena. She shut him down and warned him that if he ever dared to be disrespectful, she'd never forgive him because that was totally off-limits. She made him swear he wouldn't mess with Siena and decided to handle the whole situation herself. Abel could tell Maria was a total hard worker who always showed exactly how she felt. She was acting like a total stranger today, and since she already called herself a vessel, he was dying to know what her deal was with that fake god, because even if she wasn't a mindless puppet, something was seriously off. He was super confused about Maria's plan to save the students, especially since she only came to the Flame Academy because that's where all the best young wizards are. Led is nothing like the false gods he expected, because instead of being a mindless force of destruction, this guy actually has a master plan and knows exactly what he's doing. With power like Anthropos, wiping those students out should have been a total piece of cake. So he figured there had to be a catch. Siena tried to look away the second Maria and Abel spotted her, but it was too late. They'd already seen her. Maria called her out by name, practically begging her to just work with them. She was totally stunned when Sienna just ignored them and slammed the door shut, but she wasn't finished yet, so they went right in after her. Sienna's actually paying attention, so Mireia starts asking her all about her powers and what her big plan is. With Sienna finally helping out, Mireia told Abel to go grab Victor since he's probably back on his feet by now. Abel's confused why she's so fired up, but he follows her lead, knowing that if she unleashes that same crazy power from before, they'll definitely win, and he's dying to see it again. He reached for the door, but Victor beat him to it and looked totally stunned to see Abel standing right there. Abel says they just finished their big strategy meeting, and now he's here to pick him up. Victor started yapping about all the reasons he lost the fight, but he finally agreed to help, and Abel was so hyped he didn't even care about his weird excuses. They both agreed and shook hands to make it official. They tracked down Mireia, but they were in for a massive surprise. They looked over and saw Sienna was already out cold on Mireia's lap, totally tuned out from everything around her. She tries to wake her up over and over, but she isn't moving at all. They have no choice but to kick off the meeting while Sienna is still totally passed out. Mireia was honestly so happy to finally see Victor. Abel figured the guy had no clue how the fight worked, so he suggested a super quick rule check. Mireia explains that classes face off in 4-team brawls with 16 people total, where winning gets you 3 points but last place loses you 3, and Abel is already sweating because he's totally lost with all this new lingo. Mireia catches him staring, so he plays it cool and says he's just remembering her advice, and she explains that every student gets points based on their class rank. These points, if the top 3 ranks get a 0, they only drop down 1 level, but if they grab 10 points, they'll move all the way up to grade A. Abel finally gets the point, but Victor is super annoyed they're wasting time because Abel skipped the teacher's talk on day 1. So Mireia explains that the match is just a simple points. She says every kill gets your team a point, and the final score is just whatever you've racked up before the clock hits 0. If you're defeated, you're out for good with, it's basically kill or be killed, and Abel knew that just staying alive was totally pointless. Since the player count is set, goals run out fast as time ticks away, making the start super important, and Mireia knows they have to work together perfectly from the jump. Having the right info is a total game changer, and she says most squads will stay glued together because splitting up is way too dangerous. If they take out just one person, it turns into a 4-on-3, giving them the perfect chance to totally wreck the other team. Abel asks what the real plan is, but he and Victor are totally shocked when Mireia asks if they have super senses or can analyze sound, because if they actually had those powers, Victor wouldn't be stuck in Class D. Mireia just laughs and puts all her chips on Abel for Plan B, which is scouting from the sky, and even though Abel's a bit nervous, he knows he can totally pull it off using. Mireia's already got a direct line to that same fake god, so he doesn't need to draw any attention to himself and decided to just stay low-key. His jaw dropped when Mireia announced that he was the only one who could handle it. He immediately asked Mireia why she picked him, and she just said it's obvious since he can fly and actually go toe-to-toe with Frozel. Abel is in a massive mess because a fake god just took over Mireia, and even though he tried to stay hidden, it looks like that was all part of her trap from the start. Victor was totally blown away that Abel could fly and hold his own against a top student like Frozel, but Abel was freaking out about other teams noticing him, so he straight up lied and told them he couldn't use flight magic at all. He says Mireia probably just saw him jump super high to dodge something and totally thought he was flying. Mireia got dead serious after hearing him out and apologized for totally getting the wrong idea. She asked Victor if he could fly, and he got totally triggered because it was super obvious he couldn't. Since nobody can fly, Mireia offers to use water like a telescope to see far away, but she needs a wide-open spot where trees and hills won't block the view. They're told to hide and go for a sneak attack, but they still don't stand a chance. He's stacking up points now so he can take control and stay ahead when things get crazy. Victor and Mireia are totally confused when Abel suggests they get noticed right from the start, and the whole room just goes dead silent. So Abel decides he's just gonna wrap up the final details tomorrow. Victor agrees and heads out, while Abel is stunned to see that Sienna is still totally passed out. He offers to walk Mireia to her dorm, but she has no clue where it is, so she just decides to wait until she's fully awake. He was just about to bail when Mireia told him her dream was to go on wild adventures and plan things out with her friends. Abel thinks back to the day they met when she mentioned loving the book, The Adventures of Golo, and Mireia is totally shocked he actually remembered that. She was 100% sure Abel didn't care about books, so he promised to start reading more and asked her what her favorite part of the story was. Mireia's gears were totally turning as he tried to figure out his next move. Out of nowhere, she started geeking out about how awesome the character was and broke down every detail of the final fight. Mireia ended up making him promise he'd read the whole thing and tell her exactly what he thought. Mireia just couldn't shake those dark memories that were still messing with her head. She hears her dad's voice and feels his hand gently stroking her head. He promises everything's gonna be totally fine and that he's definitely coming back. She begged him to stay and not leave her all alone. But her dad just apologized and dropped the truth that he's actually a mage. She broke down in tears when her dad refused to change his mind and just dumped her at her aunt's house. Then one day, she suddenly gets a mysterious letter. Plus, they were rocking a mysterious necklace. She remembers her dad's words about how mages have to prepare for the worst, stand up to the fake god, and fight to protect everyone who doesn't have magic. She remembers becoming a mage just to help him fight, and now she's crying her eyes out while reading his letter. She heard rumors that his dad was sent on a mission so crazy it was basically a suicide run. She finally pieces it all together and realizes her dad died in a pointless border fight started by greedy men. And it wasn't even to save anyone from a disaster. In this world, mages are basically like human gold, so any kid with powers gets shipped straight to a magic academy. Even though she's an orphan, she didn't get. When she got into the Astorio Academy of Magic, everyone was hyped for her and figured her dad would be super proud. She was totally messed up because her magic actually killed her dad. And even though people treat that disaster like a fake ghost story, she finally realized mages are just living weapons meant for war, and she's no different. She was terrified of wizards and hated their guts, so she prayed to God to just wipe magic off the face of the earth forever. This fake god heard her and thought she was a pretty interesting little creature. God himself actually decided to hand this over. Abel waved bye to Mireia and headed straight for the library. A little while later, Mireia was finally all by herself. She heard God himself asking about the little shows and events that were coming up next. Her eyes went wide when God ordered her to hand over every single one of her followers. The god claims they need to be sacrificed to bring back her power, saying she has to absorb a ton of souls to get a physical form. But Mireia isn't having it because the fake. She even said that if she just hands over her soul, that'll be more than enough. She was totally fuming and told that fake god to stop messing with her just because he claimed she'd forgotten everything. The fake god reminds her that she's the one who called him to grant her wish, and Mireia's eyes go wide with total confusion. She just wants magic to vanish forever so the world can finally be at peace and everyone stops killing each other. She was totally floored when the fake god told her it didn't even matter, because if every mage disappeared, magic itself would vanish along with the world she always dreamed of. Mireia begged the fake god to just stop already. She grabbed a knife off the table and tried to end her life right then and there. Right then, she felt something totally off. She slammed into the ground, gasping for air, as the fake god punished her for trying to pull it off 17 times. But she still hasn't learned her lesson. Maria broke down in tears, realizing she'd been acting totally crazy and obsessing over her own goals ever since her dad passed away. She scrambled across the ground, just hoping Abel would show up and help her out. Abel was already at the library hunting for the book Maria told him about, but he didn't actually care about the story at all. The way Maria dropped that hint proves she wants him to crack the code, which means that fake God hasn't totally taken over her brain yet. He starts flipping through the pages, hunting for a secret keyword. If he figures out that keyword, he just has to plug it into the code and swap the letters. He was totally shocked when he heard the hero's words during the final fight, realizing that Ash, the best friend who's been protecting Hollow, was the secret keyword he needed all along. Isha's death is definitely not going to be for nothing! Maria thinks back to when her dad used to read her that awesome story about a hologram's wild adventures. She burst into tears, feeling like a total idiot for being such a mess of a daughter. She's the one who summoned that fake god, so now she's got to pay the price for it. She gripped her dad's necklace tight and swore she wouldn't let this messed up version of salvation go down. She realized Abel was on a whole different level because she never expected him to actually remember their wild hollow adventure. She was sure his power was totally strange and way beyond anything a normal mage could ever pull off. It was something so crazy that even the fake god himself had no clue what he was looking at. She thought he was just using some fake god's power at first, but Abel was actually on a whole different level. So because of that, she actually begged him to end her life. The creator god built this whole world and made everyone look exactly like him. He created the soul first and then made the body to hold it, recording the whole process in the ancient primordial series. Then you have these 8 fake gods who are basically walking disasters, starting with So, who cursed Abel's sister to die young and has been wrecking the world ever since. That night, he went through Maria's notes and was totally blown away by how deep and cool her ideas actually were. Next morning in class, he was still obsessing over it because he knew he just wasn't on that level yet. If Maria finally got his hands on every single piece he needed for his research, if he really locks in and gives it everything he's got, he might just pull this off all by himself. The Eurofiles he decoded were super detailed, giving him the full scoop on the fake god Anthropos and a perfect strategy for a total invasion. He looks at Maria and realizes she's been secretly hoarding all this for a long time, right under that fake god's nose. He was dying to see what would happen if her crazy plan actually worked and what kind of future was waiting for her. He really respected her, but he felt so bad for Maria because he just couldn't make her dream come true, and it really made him stop and think. His eyes went totally wide the second Victor screamed his name. The guy was getting super annoyed, so Maria apologized right away. Victor was fuming because everyone was treating this meeting like a total joke. The two of them just stared into space while Sienna was fast asleep again. Abel stops the drama and locks in, telling the crew to drop their guard while asking Victor how long he can hold the line. And when Victor says it depends on the ground, Abel asks Maria if the battlefield is hilly. Maria was still totally zoned out and didn't answer, so Abel had to call her name one more time. The two guys were totally thrown off because they were asking about the area, but she was talking about the laws. Out of nowhere, this guy walks up and starts making a total joke out of their big strategy meeting. Victor totally lost it the second he saw the guy and started picking a fight, leaving Abel super confused since he had no idea who this dude even was. Maria tells him this guy is actually their classmate and their next opponent, telling him to check the bracket since he's so bad with names, until the guy finally introduces himself as E. Maria warns that this guy's magic is totally off the charts, making him a dangerous leader they need to watch, but Abel honestly can't even remember his name or what he looks like. He's got way more important stuff to deal with, so he calls Mireia, but she's gone totally silent and her acting all weird is really starting to freak him out. She tells him to swing by her room after dinner because she's got something she really needs to tell him. Abel headed straight to the student council office to meet up with Judith. The second he stepped into the room, he apologized right away for bothering her. The president was totally shocked when he actually showed up to see her face to face. She rushes straight to Abel, thinking he's finally changed his mind and is ready to join their council. Abel was just about to speak, but Judith shut him down and told him he couldn't just rely on his facial expressions to get by. Her eyes went wide when Abel told her he was actually there to see all her research. Abel totally got why Judith was freaking out, since his request was a massive taboo for any mage, and she honestly could have just kicked him out right then and there. He's almost out of time and knows he can't handle this mess alone anymore, so he grabs Judith and begs her to help him before it's too late. He was ready to pay whatever price she asked for, no matter how crazy it was. The president was absolutely shook. She stayed locked in because Abel finally named his price. She told him straight up that her research needs a massive reward, and Abel didn't even hesitate to say yes. He was totally caught off guard when the president brought up his goal, since she had no idea just how much he was actually going to help her. With both of them finally on board, Judith suggested they make it official by sealing the deal in blood. He said yes, but he was clearly freaking out, so Judith noticed and told him to just mix a drop of his blood into the ink. They sealed their deal with a hardcore blood contract to create an unbreakable bond. And even though Abel had never made a pact like this before, he was totally fine with it since he was sharing his research anyway. Right after the deal was officially sealed, Judith made it crystal clear she was out for blood, and Abel knew she wasn't playing around. He didn't have a single doubt, feeling super grateful that she actually took his crazy request seriously. They pressed their fingers onto the signed paper, and Judith says their new oath is so strong that absolutely nobody can mess with them now. The second their blood mixed together, the deal was officially locked in. Out of nowhere, a bright light flashes and Abel looks totally confused. The president set a massive price, so now he has to pay it back by being the star representative in the next big class competition. Class D is going all out to grab that final win. He was so relieved Judith didn't ask to see his research, because that would have been a total disaster. They can throw all the rules they want at him, but it's not gonna change a thing. The big day is finally here, and Selene is the one leading her class into the fight. I did a quick head count to make sure my whole squad was actually there. She told the squad to hit their spot and wait in the staging area because the very second their team's light flashes, the fight is officially on. Then they order them to get out of the forest right now. Abel realizes that everything is totally riding on this. Can they even survive this massive team battle? The squad pushed deep into the woods until they spotted a torch to mark their spot. Abel thought this field was massive after walking for 30 minutes straight, and Victor told him to stay sharp as they finally reached the edge. He also mentioned that every player has a signal on their wrist that tracks exactly where they are. They were still inside the academy, so the sword of Azoth's healing blessing was still working its magic. If you get stabbed in the heart while you're out cold and don't get healed, you're toast. And even though Abel knew it was possible, he figured no student would actually be that insane. He thought back to his talk with Maria 5 days ago and was totally shocked when she said they had to sacrifice everyone except their own crew. Wiping out humanity is the only way to escape this fake god, and he's planning to make it all happen right at Plum Academy. Maria says the fake god inside her is actually missing some pieces, and to save the world, he needs to get a real body to finally be whole. They need 10 victims for this, and Abel is totally shocked because her story doesn't match the files, but it fills in the missing pieces perfectly. This fake god is basically a parasite eating Maria from the inside to steal her soul, and since it's trapped there, she's begging him to kill them both at once. She thought she could just sacrifice herself to fix everything, which explains why she's been acting so weird. But joining the squad wasn't part of her plan, and she definitely didn't expect that fake god to start making moves so soon. He takes one look at her face and knows she's totally desperate for his help. It's all about turning victims into soul-powered fuel, and since Abel already knew the drill, he went straight to the student council president to force a deal no matter what. Maria's eyes went wide the second Abel said he was actually down to help. She was totally caught off guard by how fast Abel agreed, but he stayed super chill because he knew that student had to go. The second Maria hears the word murder, she completely snaps. Abel tells her to chill since she's the one who brought this up, and now he's asking her what the plan is. Maria says they've got to tie everyone up and bring them together, and Abel's totally shocked when she adds that they need to knock out every student and keep them alive to win the match, proving she's aiming for way more than just avoiding last place. They somehow pulled off the plan and made it just in time right as they spotted the torch. Victor instantly slams down his earth wall to use as a shield. They're making it super easy to find them because that's exactly what they planned. Knowing they'd lose a fair fight, they build a fake base as bait and clear the trees to see everything. Then they hide in the woods and wait for the enemy to walk into the trap, so everyone grabs a corner to cover their blind spots, ready to give the signal the second they see someone coming. Abel could feel a super nervous Maria hovering right behind him, so he told her to back off before things looked weird. But she suddenly froze up when they both heard a strange noise. They spun around and realized the noise was coming right from Victor's side. They look around and the whole fortress is just gone. There's no signal, they only heard one shot, and there isn't even a single trace of a battle anywhere. Abel started panicking because Victor got wiped out instantly before he could even send a signal. They peek around and spot Dulcie standing on the wrecked fortress, just straight up laughing at their plan. Their eyes shot open when they realized Dulcie wasn't alone. She had 12 people from 3 different teams backing her up. They were totally clueless and had no idea what was even going down. Abel realizes all the other teams joined forces to take him out so they don't finish last, and he totally didn't see that coming. Class D was facing total expulsion if they hit last place, and since they were so low on mana, the top 3 teams joined forces to turn them into an easy target. He starts whining that it's totally against the rules, but Maria shuts him down because there's no rule against teaming up, so it's actually fair game. They found out Dulce ordered the students to group up and hunt them down one by one, and Abel was furious when he heard they'd already planned how to split the points by saving the last person for the end. Abel was low-key freaking out because he was supposed to be the one waking everyone up, but they'd already gathered together on their own. He told them they could totally crush these guys if they just used the fake god's power. Maria's totally against this because she can't let them see the power of that fake god. Abel just stares at her and asks why it matters if they were seen, since they already used everyone as a sacrifice anyway. Maria was weirded out by how chill Abel was, but his plan was so trash it actually made her furious. She screamed that he was siding with the fake god just to kill their classmates. He even asked her if she was chickening out. Maria stayed quiet, looking like she was totally backed into a corner. Right before they left the hideout, she looked Abel in the eye and told him he'd seriously let her down. A little while later, they finally stepped out from their hiding spot. Dulce didn't waste any time and started talking mad trash to them. But Maria wasn't stressed about it one bit. And I finally let that chaotic ball of energy fly. Dulce and the other students were totally freaked out when everything suddenly went pitch black. Dulce was already dying to ask her what kind of crazy magic she was using. But he didn't even get to finish his sentence before something crazy happened out of nowhere. His head and the rest of the students' heads were sliced clean in half. Their hands and legs were sliced into tiny pieces. They hit the dirt totally lifeless, and Abel just stood there watching Maria do her thing like he was waiting for a signal. His eyes go wide as Maria starts turning the students' souls into straight-up mana. Maria really didn't want to, but she let her magic circle fade away and raised her hand. But right before that could even go down, she totally broke down in tears and stopped right there, crying out that she didn't want to do it anymore. She's literally begging Abel to finish her off, so he doesn't waste a single second before unleashing his ice powers, and drives it straight through her. Maria hit the ground, and she wasn't moving anymore. But it turns out Abel was the one who actually ordered her to wake up. Maria finally wakes up and starts acting like she has no clue what's even going on. Abel just grinned when she called him a bastard because she wasn't Maria anymore. She had finally turned into the false goddess he was waiting for. That fake goddess flashed a super creepy smile and told them her name is Anthropos. Campbell tried to introduce himself, but Anthropos totally shut him down because she didn't care about human names at all. She asks what he actually did to Maria's body when he plunged that icy spear into her. Abel just kept his cool and said he was only doing exactly what Maria told him to do. He balled up his fist and asked her if she'd ever heard of the fake god named So. The second Anthropos heard that name, his eyes went wide and he was totally stunned. He was totally hooked and started asking about the false god's curse right away, begging her for help and saying he'd take whatever she threw his way. But to his shock, Anthropos didn't even give him an answer. She didn't even hesitate and sliced his hands right then and there. It surged up his body, hitting him again and again until it reached his head. Anthropos was absolutely livid that Abel had the guts to talk to her like they were on the same level. She figured Abel was pretty sharp, but he was still just a weak human as she reached down and yanked his head up. She might have let Abel live if he just stayed quiet, but her jaw dropped when he suddenly snapped back to life and started talking. The last guy just smirked because he was deep in the chaos zone, where everything is meant to be a total mess. Maria explains that in the spirit realm, physical stuff doesn't exist and you're just a floating mind. So since everything is a total illusion, you can get sliced into pieces without your real body getting a single scratch. So basically, attacking Anthropos is totally pointless now. Anthropos burst out laughing because Abel was spot on. The Chaos Realm is strictly for souls, and that plan he's talking about is nothing but a total fantasy. She walks right up to Abel and tells him to listen, staying right where she is because she's totally in control and can take him out as many times as she wants. To him, this was 100% real, so she started digging her finger right into Abel's chest. She asks him how much pain he can handle from a lost limb, the suffering of not breathing, and the pure terror of dying, since he's really just a regular guy with zero willpower. She licks the blood off her finger and wonders if she should keep the torture going, knowing he'll eventually beg her to just finish him off. Abel just wouldn't stay down, and the second he came back to life, he stepped right up to challenge Anthropos again. Another comment pops up calling him a total idiot, and just slices every single piece apart. He just kept going at him over and over. She didn't stop for a single second until Abel. He headed straight out into the middle of the burning desert. He was just wondering how Anthropos was going to finish him off this time. Anthropos stayed right on his tail as they headed deep into the desert. She was losing her mind because no matter how many times she ended him, he just stayed totally chill. She claims he's just a puppet for some fake god, but Abel shuts her down because he still feels pain, just like a regular human. Abel finally realized that he's been dying to use magic his whole life, but it was the one thing he just couldn't do. The door swung open, and Anthropo was hit with a level of luxury that normal people could only dream of, making his eyes go wide in total shock. He thought he was going totally crazy, and Abel was like, "Yeah, you probably are." He might have looked like a total psycho to everyone else, but he honestly didn't care what they thought of him. Anthropos suddenly bursts out laughing because she finally realizes this guy is a total idiot. She stopped playing because Abel totally froze when they suddenly warped back to the real world and he saw Dulce right next to the dead bodies of his teammates on the ground. Anthropos looked pretty stressed because in that world she was totally going to take him out. Anthropos threatened to kill Abel, but the guy didn't even blink because dying in this world was no big deal to him. Since every single thing was going down exactly how he planned it, he looked at the Dulce group and saw them getting ripped to shreds in the spirit world. But in reality, they didn't have a single scratch on them. Anyway, Anthropos just straight up summons a terrifying demon. They start blasting Abel with massive bolts of lightning. He's got a massive advantage now that he's already seen this demon and its moves before. Just like we thought, even a fake god can't use those crazy chaos powers in this world since not having a physical body is a massive weakness. This fake god was actually just a regular person using Mirea's body as a shell, so he fought him just like any other mage. He whipped out a magic stone and started bending the wind to his will. Suddenly, this fake god was seriously struggling to catch his breath. Abel gets a huge, smug grin on his face when he realizes his magic is totally working. This guy uses science to control the wind with magic, and if he can just shut it down, he's got this win in the bag. His eyes went wide when the fake god suddenly started sprinting straight for him. And he proved it. The guy was definitely using science. He knew his wind powers were totally busted and wouldn't work at close range anymore. He had to keep enough air around him so he wouldn't choke. That meant anyone standing close by was actually totally safe. He tried to take out the fake god in one shot, but things went south fast. That fake god is already letting loose a ton of evil spirits. Abel was freaking out and didn't know if he should drop an ice wall, because if those spirits all fired at once, he'd get totally wrecked and it would be game over the second he passed out. He blasts the explosion straight at the demon spirit. Abel gets launched outside by the blast, and even though getting hit point blank is brutal, it's a total joke compared to the pain he felt back in the spiritual realm. He looked around and realized that every single student had already bailed. He spots Anthropos standing there all beat up on the other side, and she's totally fuming because he's being such a massive pain to deal with. But Abel, the bull started mocking her right after she praised him, and that made the fake god absolutely lose it. He looked at the fake goddess and saw she was barely hanging on, way too weak to even heal her own wounds. He froze up for a second, totally unsure if he should actually strike her. He totally freaked out when he saw Anthropos spot Victor lying helpless on the ground. That fake goddess gives a creepy smirk and sits right next to Victor, since her plan is to eat his soul first and then take care of Abel. The second guy's jaw dropped when he saw the fake god turning Victor's soul into raw magic to create a physical body for himself. He started panicking and instantly used his ice spear to stop her in her tracks. That fake goddess blocked his spear with a shield and just kept going, so if he doesn't stop her now, he's totally gonna run out of time to finish his mission. Abel's eyes go wide when Mireia finally hits him up to say she's got the fake god pinned down. And this is his big moment to finally take her out. Abel's face dropped the second that fake god let the demon loose. Lightning blasts down at him again, but he somehow manages to dodge the whole thing. He pumped his fist and flashed Mireia a grin for finally making the right move, while the fake god was absolutely fuming because she'd been waiting forever for this moment. She warned Mireia not to do anything stupid since they'd both die if Abel killed her. But Mireia didn't even care and actually dared Abel to just finish the job already. Abel tries to apologize, but Mireia totally gets it, believing her life is a small price to pay to finally take down that fake god. She threw her arms wide, totally ready to face the end right then and there. Her eyes pop as Abel triggers the magic circle and starts turning her soul into pure magical energy. So Abel went straight to the president and signed a deal to get his hands on all her research about turning souls into magic power. He was super hyped to finally have that document right in his hands. The prez was dying to know why he wanted that file so bad, but he decided to just keep his mouth shut. She warns Abel that the magic exit is way too weak to actually work, and he totally gets what she's saying. He rushed straight to his room and started breaking down every single detail. Just like he thought, the president totally turned that soul into pure magic. These records show a direct connection where magic follows the classic rules, meaning the creator god crafts your soul and body at the exact same time. Mireya's data finally revealed the truth. Magic didn't come from God, it was actually made by a fake god. The president was totally clueless, so her soul didn't fully turn into magic and they barely got any power at all. Abel realized this was way bigger than just science. Their world is packed with secrets, and those fake gods are the only way to uncover the truth. He never actually wanted to take out Anthro. He's got zero magic, so he has to find a way to get it, starting with turning actual souls into pure power. The magic stones just didn't have enough power, so he's actually using their souls to get what he needs and start their massive takeover. His eyes go wide as this crazy dark energy starts swirling all around Mireya. He wasn't sure if he actually pulled it off, but he totally freaked out when Mireya's body just slammed into the ground. Abel's jaw hit the floor when he saw the naked Anthropos standing right there, finally split apart from Mireya's body. The fake goddess tried to speak, but her voice came out super squeaky because she'd suddenly turned into a little kid. Abel was totally stunned because Anthropos had no clue who she was, only remembering that he used reincarnation and she somehow ended up in this weird new form. But then, Mireya's eyes suddenly snapped open. She was totally shocked to find herself still breathing, since she was sure she and Anthropos had just ended it all together. Abel was hyped to see her, and everything was going perfectly. But things got crazy when they figured out how to turn souls into magic power right before the big war. He starts breaking down his big theory about Mireya, but nobody actually got him, since he's such a massive genius that he's the only one who understands his own words. He looked at Mireya and apologized for not actually killing her like she wanted him to. Mireya was totally stunned when her body suddenly felt light as air, realizing that Anthropos had finally vanished from inside her. She said if this kid really was an Anthropos, she was finally free, but right as she was processing that, her eyes shot wide open. Suddenly, Anthropos lunges at Abel, grabs him by the hair, and begs him to use her chaotic sphere. They started fighting, and she got so annoyed with him being all touchy that she just smacked him. Blood was pouring down Abel's face, but he just kept going like it was nothing. Mireya instantly smashed her elbow into his head, and as Abel sobbed on the floor, she apologized while making it clear she wasn't letting his pervy behavior slide. Anthropos instantly flips onto his back, doing everything he can to stay away from Abel. She claims that Mireya is literally the only person she has left in this world. That's why she begged her for protection from Abel, leaving Mireya totally stunned. She suddenly yanked her hair as she remembered how mean that fake god was, making little Anthropos burst into tears and call her a total bully. Abel couldn't handle the pressure anymore, so he told Mireya to bring that false god right to him. She tries to get him to chill, but Abel's eyes go totally psycho, so she snatches Anthropos and bolts out of there. Word about the crazy fight blew up across the entire Academy of Flame. Everyone was gossiping about the kids who'd been knocked out for 3 days, but nobody actually knew what went down. They were totally trashing Abel's team, calling them weak losers The team fights ended in total madness. Anyone who died in that chaotic zone totally forgot everything that happened there. So the scary truth about Mireya's link to the fake gods never came out, and Abel and Mireya just played. Mireya and Abel are totally disqualified now because they accidentally ran out of bounds while chasing the Anthropos. They still managed to snag second place, and now every team is staring at the scoreboard in total shock. Everyone was totally lost because the team that beat Victor took first, and since 3 teams got 0 points, They couldn't figure out how they landed in second place, while Victor started yelling at Sienna. Mireia told him to relax, since they only snagged second place because Sienna carried the whole team. She stayed clear of that fake god's crazy chaos zone, and since nobody could find or beat her, she was officially declared a survivor once the fighting finally ended. Just surviving doesn't give you points, but since 3 teams tied, the rule says the team with more survivors ranks higher, so Victor threw Sienna on his back and got ready to leave. Mireia asked if he was feeling better, and Victor just grinned because he'd slept like a log and is the type of guy who can crash for 3 whole days. Abel finally caught a break now that he wasn't getting kicked out, but a massive school tournament was right around the corner and only the class reps were allowed to join. This was the one thing he absolutely needed to finally take the win. Mireia brings up the Anthropos Abel is looking after and tells him not to be a jerk, making Abel smile because even after all the pain she caused him, she's still way too kind. She also made sure to thank Abel for turning in his submission. He could have died right there, and Abel was totally shocked because saving Mireia wasn't even the reason he did it. All he wanted was to break the curse that was destroying his sister. He spent every second hunting for any clue about the false gods. He was even ready to become their slave just to get what he told Mireia to just chill and not stress about it. Mireia screams back that she really does care, but she just can't go on because it feels like something is holding her back. Abel was totally confused by the way she was acting. He was totally stunned when Mireia suddenly spun around and bolted away. Mireia finally stopped, gasping for air as she tried to catch her breath. She slams her hand over her mouth, her heart racing like crazy. Abel headed straight to the student council room to thank Judith face to face. This meant he was repping Class D in the big tournament, and he was definitely going to win it all. If he doesn't pull this off, they'll literally decide if he lives or dies. That was the price for turning a soul into magic and control, and while Judith was hyped, Abel was totally not feeling it, so she poked his cheek when she saw him acting weird. He asked the president why she was so desperate for him to fight when those 2 spells were worth way more than the deal. But Judith just said she was curious about his magic. She wanted him to see the fight at full power so he could finally understand what he's truly capable of, while Abel was busy wondering if he should just demand those rare research materials as payment instead. Judith totally shocked him by saying that if she pulled it off, he could actually back out of the deal. Abel stares at the president, thinking about explaining his rule-breaking scientific magic, but he decides to keep his mouth shut because he doesn't want to be hunted as a heretic for no reason. She made him an offer that was honestly a total no-brainer. He felt like he missed something earlier, but he was backed into a corner and had to take her deal. Then Judith totally shocks him by asking if she was actually a super evil person. Abel was told to take down a Class A student, probably Frocel, but he just smirked and said he'd handle it because he still had plenty of time and a massive secret weapon ready to go. The president must have been thinking the same thing, because that's totally why she set those rules. Judith says she's actually got some seriously high expectations for Abel. She swore she wasn't up to anything, but she was totally obsessed with his magic, especially that spear that looked like ice but wasn't, and all the weird powers she knew nothing about. She had to see it for herself to solve the mystery, but just as she went to say something, she realized Abel had already dipped. Suddenly, a loud knock at the door snaps her right out of her thoughts. She was totally shocked when she swung the door open and spotted the academy director's leg. This guy usually ghosts everyone unless it's a big event and he's never cared about the student council. But now he's actually standing in their room for the first time, but then she accidentally catches Abel sneaking right out of her room. He asked if they were super close, but Judith explained she was just trying to get him to join the student council, and the principal totally got it. He warned her to stay away from that guy because he needed her help to crack the case. The very next day, Mireia heads straight over to Abel's dorm. She was totally second-guessing herself at first, but she didn't let that stop her. But he finally got the guts to knock on his door. Abel's in the room now and he just grabbed a knife. He looks seriously ticked off seeing the Anthropos just lying there on the ground. She straight up threatened to kill him 13 different times. He finally managed to take down this fake goddess, but she's a total nightmare who tries to end him every single chance she gets. She thinks the only way to ditch her master is to hand him over to a gang or wait for him to die. And honestly, you can't blame her. But she's forced to obey Abel's orders and she's way too weak to pull it off anyway. Abel thought she'd be way more chill, but since she kept resisting, he just sighed and told her to stop the pointless struggle because there's no way she can kill him like this. He reaches out his hand and asks her to help him out instead. Anthropos broke down in tears because he realized he was nothing but a fake god. She was absolutely fuming that some random nobody actually forced her to crawl on the ground like that. Abel was totally stressed and explained he only held her down because she kept trying to kill him, so he made her promise to stop. And once the fake god agreed, he finally let her go with a massive sigh of relief. Out of nowhere, Anthropos snatched a knife and held it right against him. Abel was totally stuck, so he ordered her to get back down and crawl on the ground again. He was totally confused that Anthropos's mind had basically dropped to the level of a baby. Suddenly, Maria bursts into the room and catches everything, explaining she'd been knocking forever to bring Anthropos some clothes, but nobody answered the door. The moment she saw Anthropos, she started sobbing for help and blamed Abel for trapping her, using that as a twisted excuse to just keep killing him. Maria is such a sweetheart that she actually begs Abel to let her go. The second Anthropos got loose, she snatched a knife and held it to Maria's throat, laughing that they fell for her trap and telling Abel he had to set her free if he wanted Maria to live. Abel let out a sigh, totally done with this fake god, and finally unleashed his true power. Later on, Maria says sorry to Abel for ever doubting him. Abel told her not to sweat it, as long as she finally understood his deal. He explains that Anthropos is basically a powerless fake god now, unable to use even the weakest magic that would have totally finished him off if it could. He ordered Anthropos to surrender while she sat there silently, but the fake goddess totally lost it, screaming at him to shut up because she'd never take orders from a human. Abel got right in her face and told her she had to serve him, and no matter how much she hated his guts, she couldn't ignore a single command. He threatened to keep her paralyzed and make her feel insane pain as payback for what she did to him in the spirit world. Anthropos looked totally freaked out by those words and started overthinking every little detail. Then she swore she'd finally start playing nice. Abel wasn't buying her story since she'd lied to him before, so a terrified Anthropos swore she was finally being for real, and while Abel agreed to listen, he would know. Too bad Anthropos was totally in the dark and had no clue what was happening. She barely even talks to the other fake gods, and Abel clenches his fist because Anthropos is honestly just a totally useless god. He remembers Anthropos bragging about knowing way more than him back when she was in Maria's body. So realizing things won't just go his way, he asks her to finally explain the truth about their world. The fake god flashed a creepy smile because he was about to demand something huge. She couldn't handle such a huge question, so Abel got straight to the point and asked why these fake gods were murdering everyone. And Anthropos explained that when these calamities show, Abel was totally fuming that they had the nerve to call their brutal slaughter salvation. Anthropos gives a super creepy smile and says she's actually saving him, claiming that souls are meant to be free but bodies are just chains making Abel suffer, so she's going to break those chains and finally let him out. Abel was totally lost and asked for a simpler explanation, but when Anthropos mentioned they serve the supreme god, Abel cut him off and realized that's the same god who actually built their world. He was dead wrong, because the supreme god and the world's creator are totally different, since the supreme god actually made the creator himself, and Anthropos says this supreme god is the original absolute being who's in a league of... The supreme god built this perfect world with 9 helpers who are actually total fakes, and Abel is losing his mind because everyone thought there were only 8 gods, but Anthropos says there's... Anthropos smirked as she finally caught on, explaining that the 9th subordinate Abel mentioned is actually the same god everyone calls the ruler of their world. The god who actually built this whole physical world. She also said this creator got blinded by greed and built a world that's totally warped, ugly, and honestly just gross to look at. Abel was totally lost, so he spoke up for the fake god and told everyone their world is basically hell and they're just trying to set them free. The Anthropos are totally down for it because their world is a complete nightmare filled with disasters, hunger, and sickness that makes staying alive almost impossible. She said people fight over nothing, bully each other, steal, and even kill, even in a place like Plum Academy that's supposed to be for kids. Here's the kicker. Even when they die, their souls just get recycled into brand new bodies right back in that world. Only those fake gods have the power to actually stop this endless loop. To him, this is what he calls being saved. Abel was super mad because he thought people shouldn't be killed by their own kind. But he was totally thrown off when Anthropos said the creator made death the ultimate nightmare just to keep everyone trapped in their world. There's no way he's buying that logic, because even if those fake gods think the world is a total nightmare, he knows people are better than that and refuses to see their... He let out a heavy sigh and asked him one more time, "What even is magic anyway?" Anthropos stopped to think about the deep question. Then she told them magic is basically just breaking the rules of reality, while Abel just stayed quiet because he was totally lost. Maria was eavesdropping the whole time and suddenly claimed magic is the literal law of the universe, which totally shocked Abel and Anthropos. So Anthropos told Abel to give her the full rundown. Abel figures it's the perfect time to tell Mireia the truth. The original sequence is a total lie that breaks the laws of their world, just like how the 4 elements aren't even real. She wasn't buying it, so Abel reminded her that his magic is built on the actual laws of the world, which is why he can pull off crazy moves that normal wizards think are totally impossible. Abel asks Mireia if she skipped the divine symbols in her magic circle too, and after she admits she was brainwashed by a fake god back then, he explains that most mages use spells based on totally wrong laws that somehow still work perfectly. So it makes total sense that magic can just straight up mess with the rules of reality. He asks Anthropos why the original sequence is supposed to be the absolute truth, but the fake god just yawns and says maybe the creator just set it up that way. Abel saw her move coming before she even felt it happen. He crashed on the ground and passed out, but after he tucked the fake god in, Mireia apologized for the mess and asked if he was really planning to keep him forever. She was super worried when Abel agreed, but she just couldn't find the words to speak up at first. She warns that linking up with a fake god makes you a total target, so he better watch his back since things are getting crazy lately. Abel was super confused because heretics usually worship fake gods, but he was actually the one calling the shots and stopping disasters before they even hit. Mireia agrees, but she warns him that if people actually get suspicious, they won't listen to a word he says, so he better watch his back. He's seriously gotta watch his back while he's at the academy. Back with Judith, she was totally caught off guard. Alec dropped the bombshell and told her that Abel was actually a heretic. This is looking pretty bad, but she already saw this coming and had a plan ready. She remembered the day that fake God turned into a total monster and started attacking its own people. Apparently, even people with zero magic can get crazy powers from these fake gods. Abel's magic was super mysterious, but he followed every rule perfectly, and there's no way he's a heretic after offering a deal that totally screws him over. She can't tell Alex the truth, so she just starts talking about the student count instead. They can't just look away now because this is a massive deal. She mentioned she'd talked to Abel a few times, and he didn't seem sketchy at all, so he asked the director what made him so suspicious in the first place. Oleg just said some reports caught his eye, but Abel was already dealing with some serious drama way before that. Judith was super hooked on that report because if it happened at the exchange event, she felt responsible. So she quickly explained that student drama is totally normal and the younger kids always get treated way harsher. Abel was definitely a bit weird, but calling him a total freak was way too harsh, and she got super nervous when the director caught her sticking up for him. She showed everyone that being a heretic doesn't mean you've totally lost your mind. The leg literally laughs in her face because he never expected Abel to turn into such a monster. And since they can't risk the Plum Magic Academy becoming a total disaster zone, Judith 100. She knew the choice was already made, and fighting back would only make things way worse. So, she told the director she'd play along and help with the investigation. She was 100. Her eyes went wide the second the director introduced her to someone. She didn't even see the girl walk in and thought she was just some random freshman. So the director told her that this girl was actually his personal spy who'd be reporting every single detail. He was totally counting on her, and all he really needed was for her to work with him. Anya was totally blown away by how Abel looked. She totally blew up at him, demanding to know why he was hanging out with Maria. It all started 3 days ago when Abel asked Maria if she was free to help him out with something. After enslaving the fake god Anthropos, he went all in on learning new magic and training for the class battles, leveling up his lightning and magnetism skills. His science magic breaks every rule in the book, so normal wizards see it as a total crime. But even though they'd call him a heretic, the real heretic Maria isn't. Too bad she already had plans and headed to a friend's house, which totally shocked him since he didn't even know she had friends, especially when Maria told him they were. It finally clicked for him that dark magic is a total mystery since nobody studies it, and there are basically zero records on how demonic spells even work. So that's the real reason he asked her to tag along. Maria shuts him down because he's not a demon user, but Abel won't back down since he's actually got a familiar. Maria was totally shook that it was actually true, and he straight up turned Anthropos into his slave. When the big day finally arrived, Maria was super stressed because Avunya was clearly ticked off at Abel, while Abel just looked lost since he's terrible at remembering people, even after Aviu. Abel finally remembers her and straight up calls her a phoenix. Oni was totally fuming, but Abel didn't even flinch and just introduced himself like it was nothing. Mireia tried to fix the vibe by asking if Abel could tag along, and after a second of doubt, Aeonia finally gave him the green light. She poked Abel right in the chest and told him she was counting on him. Then she spun around and yelled for the others to move it since she already bought the tickets. Abel's jaw dropped when he realized they were actually riding first class on a total magic train. He asked Mireia how she and Anya became friends, and she explained that Anya was the one who spoke up first since they both used demons and needed to stick together. Abel realizes they both summoned demons from the Goetia, a set of 72 magic books where every single book is tied to its own unique demon. Mireia turns to Abel and asks him what the deal is with Anthropos. Her jaw hit the floor when Abel suddenly summoned the spirit world and let Anthropos loose. He told them he used a whole squad to pump chaos energy into the enslavement ritual. This was the perfect spot to keep that fake goddess locked away. She was absolutely fuming after slamming into the She was busy yapping about herself, so they didn't even notice Anya suddenly burst through the door. Terrified of getting caught, Abel slammed the spirit world shut, and Anthropos vanished in a flash while screaming her head off. Anya heard the shout before she even walked in, but she only found the Ionia wouldn't let it go because she definitely heard something. But Abel just figured it was Mireia acting like a cat again. His friend was totally shocked and blurted out, "Wait, is that seriously you?" Abel gives the command, and she's forced to whimper, and it looks like Anya is actually starting to believe him. A bit later, the carriage pulls up to this absolutely massive estate. A butler and a whole squad of maids were waiting right there to welcome Anya, Mireia, and Abel the second they showed up. Everyone's jaws hit the floor when they found out Anya was actually a fancy, noble lady. The servant offered to make them some tea, but Anya shut him down and just asked for the key. She heads back to Abel and Mireia and leads them straight to the massive doors. Abel's jaw hit the floor when they walked into this massive library that made the academies look like a tiny closet, and he finally realized why demon summoners were so rare since most of the legendary sage Paracelsus's spellbooks were totally wiped out during the Big Ban. Ionia explains that summoning demons used to be totally forbidden and crazy, but she smiles when Abel says it's all about how you use it, before bragging that her family has been keeping secret forbidden books for generations. Their collection of demon books is on a whole different level, and Abel is totally geeking out over stuff he's never even heard of. And then, Avunya points out the 32nd volume of Gwitya to Maki, revealing the next demon she wants to make a deal with, and Abel's jaw drops when he sees the book is actually Asmodeus. Lust is one of the 7 deadly sins, and while taming it gives you insane power, this demon is famous for betraying its master and will literally kill you on the spot if it doesn't like your vibe. Anya totally wrecked the phoenix, but Asmodeus was a way bigger problem, and when he asked if she was seriously willing to risk it all, she just gave him a smirk because that's exactly why she brought them there. She was just trying to make a quick test call. She heard his summoning skills were totally cracked, so she agreed to join them. Abel was holding back though, because he knew this was actually super raw. Ionia felt the shift and rushed over to stop his whining, telling Abel he could name his price for some help, and while he was totally stunned, he decided to check out the books and trade his services for a grimoire he liked. His aunt finally gave in but was still super clingy, letting Abel explore the library while she headed outside to set up the rituals. Once Abel was finally on his own, he was totally blown away by everything he saw. He's never seen this many rare magic books before, and they aren't just about demons. Some look super ancient, though a lot of it is probably just total junk. He's dreaming of locking himself in there for a full week just to check out those ancient books, especially one in a mysterious old language that totally caught his eye. He snatched it up and started reading right then and there. His eyes popped the second he saw those first few pages. He tells them this is actually a massive research project all about electricity and magnets. Abel finally tracked down the book on electricity and magnetism he needed and dove straight into it. He got totally caught off guard when Anthropos suddenly lunged out, and the fake god realized it was finally just the two of them left in the library. Science rules were basically just a bunch of blurry guesses. Researching magic through science had officially hit a brick wall. He couldn't even run any tests because of how the magic worked. He spotted something wild in the book and asked Anthropos how much science she actually knew, but the fake god admitted she only understood the simple stuff. Abel tells her that science is actually super smart and useful, but for some reason it's totally missing from their world, and when he asks the fake god why, Anthropos just says it's because everyone hated it. This fake god who built the world absolutely hated science, so he wiped it out on purpose. Abel's grinding his teeth because her logic is driving him crazy, but the fake god just stays cool and says she has zero clue what's actually going on in the creator's mind. Abel grabbed the book and realized if this was legit, it totally explained why science had been wiped from the world so weirdly. He rushed out of the library and asked the maid where. It doesn't take long before Abel spots 2 women. He handed the book to Anya, but she thought it was totally worthless since it was written in some ancient language nobody could read. Abel asked to borrow it since it wasn't even a magic book and no one in the family understood the script. So Anya just let him have it because she figured it was junk. The second guy was super hyped, so they shook on it right then and there. Abel shows off his magic circle and domination spell because you can't just copy a drawing to use magic. You have to actually understand how it's built to make it work for you. The president taught him the X-Ribo spell, but he totally remade it himself and now he can't even show her the original notes. Anya was staring down that magic circle, scanning every single detail to figure out exactly how it worked. Abel was totally blown away when she mastered it so fast, since any normal mage would have taken way longer to pull that off. That's exactly why he gave Anya props for being a total natural. She flashed a smug grin and started flexing about her job researching and controlling demons. She's even showing off how to take down a demon, and since she's already handled it, she wants Abel to double-check her work just to be sure. Abel knew there were 2 ways to summon spirits, and spiritual ascension was a total game-changer because the spirit goes straight into your body, saving way more mana than using a vessel. Abel was freaking out about getting caught and tried to make a plan, but Anya totally ignored him since she thought it was a waste of time. She was positive she'd get caught, and Abel was totally blown away by how wild Anya was being. Once everything was set, she told them to head back to the academy, and even though Abel was confused, he totally agreed since he scored a legendary ancient book that was way better than the demon research he was looking for. While Anya chats with the butler, Abel asks Mireia if she's ready since they might be the only ones left to fight Asmati, and she says that while helping Anya is great, she's mostly there to watch Asmati get crushed because a chance like this is a dream come true for any demon tamer. She knew how dangerous this was, and that's exactly why he brought it along. Abel was a total natural, but he was completely shocked because he'd rather be a smart researcher than some frontline fighter. Mireia got totally fed up and told him he seriously needs to practice acting like he doesn't care for a while. Next, they headed straight into the building inside the academy. It's totally hidden so no one will notice, with plenty of room to move if things get crazy, and it's even big enough to draw the circle for Asmodeus to show up. The Ares starts forming its glowing magic circle. Then they grab a rope and tie it tight around her wrist and leg. She tells them to get out of the circle and stay back, because she's got to seal it from the inside. They left Ionia to do her thing, but Abel was totally caught off guard when Mireia asked if it was actually dangerous because he looked so stressed out. He says Ionia will pull it off, but it's super risky since any newbie who tries it will literally drop dead on the spot. He also mentioned Ionia was dying to beat some guy named Frottle Gilbert from Class A, and Mireia asked if they were related since they had the same last name. Abel knew Frottle would literally end him if he mentioned they were related, so he dodged the question and asked if she was actually that powerful. Mireia wasn't sure. Their chat got cut short the second Ionia started summoning Asmodai. Suddenly, this massive blast of power just exploded right out of Aonia's magic circle. Mireia started to freak out and yelled her name, just hoping she was actually okay. The energy vanishes to reveal Anya, and Abel is totally shocked because he thought he finally had that power under control. They were stunned when Aonia ripped her ropes apart, but when she started talking, they realized a demon had completely taken over and they had to find a way to snap her out of it. The demon spun around to ask if they were Aonia's underlings, but then Abel spotted a tail on her and realized she was actually Asmodeus, one of the 7 deadly sins. He tried to make a deal by telling the demon they don't work for Ani and aren't backing down, but the demon just wondered if they were seriously underestimating him. They literally only exist to make people suffer, and the demon warned them that trying to negotiate is a total waste of time. The demon suddenly snapped and bared its fangs because it totally hated them. Abel sees his opening and strikes first with a blast of air pressure, hoping to knock the demon out while he's still inside Awenya's body. That's why the demon couldn't say a single word. But they were totally caught off guard when a massive power suddenly burst onto the scene. Then the demon just straight up blew himself up, and just like that, the demon straight up exploded. Once the smoke finally cleared from that massive blast, he saw that Aonia's body was totally fine, without even a single scratch on her. He unleashed his massive multi-level Ice Palace spell and aimed it right at the demon. But the demon hits back and slams Abel right into the dirt. He didn't even notice that the demon was already standing right in his face. He snatched him by the chin and just lifted him straight into the air. Abel was freaking out because she was so light he could literally lift her with one hand. There were no magic circles or chanting at all, and since he had no clue what the demon could actually do, Mireia started freaking out and tried to yell Avunia awake. Abel realized Aonia was totally gone, so he squeezed his fist tight and tried to figure out his next move. He's got no other choice but to hit that reset button. He finally unleashed his spiritual world, the domain of chaos. Then both of them went crashing down into that total darkness. Mireia saw the whole thing go down and immediately hit up Abel. But in the blink of an eye, they were gone. And that's where Chapter 23 wraps up. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys loved this manga, and have a great